Chapter 245. Yi Xian stopped and turned around with a calm expression. What is it? Mad Lion and King exchanged a glance. In the end, Mad Lion said, Brother Yi, we've just received news that the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect have invaded Azure Prefecture, and their target is you. Yi Xian sneered. The Devil Sect and Ghost Sect are really stupid. Mad Lion frowned slightly. You want to make a move against them? Yi Xian said indifferently. What do you think? Mad Lion said solemnly. Then why don't we just make a move? Yi Xian said, We'll attack without a good reason. But if they invade Azure Prefecture, then we'll have a good reason to attack. Mad Lion glanced at Yi Xian. It's your Realm Defense Alliance that said to abandon Azure Prefecture and protect the Central Divine Prefecture. Yi Xian had a pitiful expression. You actually believe that nonsense, Mad Lion? Meanwhile, King suddenly said, Brother Yi, what practical benefits can we obtain if we work with you? Yi Xian said, or rather, what can you do for me? Effort and gain are proportional. What do you think? When he spoke up to this point, he smiled slightly. Let me give you a friendly reminder. The Central Divine Prefecture is about to undergo great changes. Azure Prefecture and Azure Prefecture are in chaos now. But once Azure Prefecture is over, the Central Divine Prefecture might fall into chaos as well. Although my Realm Defense Alliance has the intention to protect the Azure Prefecture, there are some forces with ulterior motives that keep harming this world. If you're willing to work with me, then come to the capital of my state of Jiang. If you're unwilling, then it's fine. Yi Xian won't force you. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He left decisively without the slightest hesitation. Mad Lion and King glanced at each other, and then they looked at the veiled woman who stood by their side. Mad Lion said solemnly, What do you mean? The veiled woman glanced at the end of the horizon and said indifferently, Try to work with him. If it's profitable, then stay. If it's not, then leave. King nodded. That's fine. Mad Lion nodded in agreement. The veiled woman slowly closed her eyes and no one knew what she was thinking. Yi Xian returned to Blue Waves Academy. He took out the World Protection Token and was about to throw it away, but as if he thought of something, he put it away again. This Realm Protection Token was naturally not real. He had just spent a gold coin to forge it at the smithy. It might be useful if he kept it. This was because not many people in the Azure Firmament world had seen the real Boundary Protection Token, and not many people dared to make a fake one. After putting away the Realm Protector Medallion, he arrived at the back of the mountain. As soon as he arrived, Situ Ming appeared in front of him. Situ Ming glanced at Yi Xian. How did you do it? Yi Xian was slightly stunned and then he said, Those mercenary groups. Situ Ming nodded. Yi Xian said with smile, They came here for money, just give them money. Situ Ming spoke indifferently, Yi Xian, there's something I need to make clear to you. From today onwards, we'll give you 500 million extreme-grade spirit stones every month at most. Obviously, they were afraid that Yi Xian would keep asking for more. On the other hand, Yi Xian was stunned. 500 million extreme-grade spirit stones every month? This happiness has come too suddenly. Yi Xian's expression remained unchanged. 500 million is too little. Situ Ming's eyelids twitched and he had a slightly hostile expression on his face. Yi Xian continued, I presume you're already aware that the Ghost Sect and Devil Sect have launched a large-scale invasion of Pine Prefecture. It can be said that the Realm Defense Alliance has been driven to desperation. Just think about it. If I don't stop the Ghost Sect and Blood Sect, then Pine Prefecture will become hell on earth in 3 days at most. At that time, the Realm Defense Alliance will be able to obtain the quintessence of Pine Prefecture with ease. The consequences will be unimaginable once they obtain it. When he spoke up to hear, he sighed softly. It's not that I'm greedy. Just think about it. So many cultivators of the Central Divine Prefecture have entered Pine Prefecture. Especially at this moment when formidable powers like the Ghost Sect and Devil Sect have invaded Pine Prefecture. How should I deal with such a situation? You can't openly help me, so I can only keep spending money to find helpers. What do you think? Situ Ming gazed coldly at Yi Xian. You're asking for a few 100 million right off the bat. Do you think we're very rich? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, It can't be helped. We're all in a difficult situation. But if we continue to argue about money, then all of us can only wait for death. Situ Ming fell silent. Yi Xian suddenly said, How about this? You give me 800 million extreme-grade spirit stones every month, but I guarantee that Pine Prefecture will absolutely not fall. Of course, the precondition is that all of you help me stop experts at the True Defiance realm and provide me with constant information. I'll deal with the rest myself. Situ Ming fell silent for a moment and then he said, "All right." Yi Xian nodded and then he stretched out his right hand. His intentions were self-evident. The corners of Situ Ming's mouth twitched. He glanced coldly at Yi Xian and then he flicked his finger. A spatial ring fell into Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian put the spatial ring away and said, "How long will it take for the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect to enter Pine Prefecture?" Situ Ming replied, 3 days at most. Yi Xian nodded, "I understand. I'll eliminate all the cultivators of the Central Divine Prefecture in the next 3 days." Situ Ming spoke indifferently, "You seem to be too confident." Yi Xian smiled, "You don't have to worry about that. Right, let me remind you that the Realm Defense Alliance is probably going to be driven to desperation. You and the others should prepare as soon as possible." Situ Ming spoke coldly, "You don't have to worry about that. We'll deal with the True Defiance realm but the rest is up to you." He turned around and left once he finished speaking. Yi Xian remained silent for a moment before he turned around and left. It didn't take long for him to arrive at Ashwave Hall. At this moment, Lu Jioga was in the hall dealing with some matters. Lu Jioga and the others were in charge of Ashwave Academy right now. Lu Jioga gazed at Yi Xian when he saw Yi Xian enter. Yi Xian asked, "How many cultivators of the Central Divine Prefecture are in Pine Prefecture now?" Lu Jioga replied, "More than 100,000. However, there aren't many who are truly formidable." Yi Xian nodded, "Investigate their whereabouts. Tell the Ash Wave Dao soldiers to prepare." Lu Jioga glanced at Yi Xian, "Are we going to make a move?" Yi Xian nodded, "We'll do it right away." Lu Jioga asked, "True Defiance Realm?" Yi Xian smiled, "I'll deal with it." He turned around and left once he finished speaking. Lu Jioga remained silent for a moment before he continued with his work. Yi Xian immediately started devouring top-grade spirit stones after he returned to his room. He naturally wouldn't place all his hopes on the Situ family. His own strength was the way to go. After devouring 100 million top-grade spirit stones, Yi Xian was about to devour more when the prison pagoda within him suddenly shook violently. Boom! Yi Xian felt like he'd been struck in the head, and he felt dizzy for an entire hour before he recovered. When he came back to his senses he was stunned. Because the prison pagoda had been restored. Yi Xian hurriedly entered the prison pagoda. There were a few hundred spatial rings on the first floor of the pagoda. Yi Xian found the spatial rings of 2 True Defiance Realm experts. Yi Xian was overjoyed when he saw the contents of the spatial rings. One of the spatial rings actually contained a heaven-rank treasure. It was a set of armor. The armor was completely black and a demonic beast was painted on its front. It was shaped like a rock with 3 legs and a pair of folded wings. Its gaze was sharp as a blade as it looked ahead. On the back of the armor were pieces of dark black scales. These scales were layered on top of each other, and a faint light was emitting from between the scales. It was no ordinary treasure. Apart from the armor, there were more than 20 true-rank spiritual weapons in the spatial ring, and they were all high-grade spiritual weapons. Not only that, there were also 6 high-grade earth-rank martial skills as well as some miscellaneous items. According to his estimations, besides the heaven-rank treasure, the rest were worth at least 200 million to 300 million top-grade spirit stones. Yi Xian put the spatial ring away and looked at the other spatial ring. There were very few things in the spatial ring but they were very good. A heaven-rank cultivation technique. Just one word. Yi Xian looked through it and the more he looked the more shocked he was. Now he finally understood why the assassins from the Dark World were so terrifying. If this cultivation technique was cultivated successfully, it could allow one to escape into space and become one with space. Moreover, one could utilize space to conceal one's aura. Even a true Defiance Realm expert wouldn't be able to notice it easily. After all, it was a heaven-rank cultivation technique. Good stuff. Yi Xian's smile was almost crooked. Besides the heaven-rank cultivation technique, there were 18 superior-grade truth-rank spirit weapons and various miscellaneous items. Apart from that, there were also a few hundred spatial rings. For the first time, Yi Xian didn't feel that he was poor. An hour later, Yi Xian finished cleaning up. This time's harvest was the most he had ever gotten. a heaven rank armor, a heaven rank cultivation technique, 79 superior grade truth rank spirit weapons, 97 superior grade truth rank spirit weapons, 127 inferior grade truth rank spirit weapons, bright rank, suddenly rich. Truly suddenly rich. Inside the prison pagoda, Zhou Xian laughed crazily. This time's harvest was too much. He could now arm the Blue Waves Dao soldiers to the teeth. And if he sold these things he could get at least a few billion top-grade spirit stones. However, he didn't plan to sell the armor and the heaven rank cultivation technique. He was going to wear the armor and cultivate the cultivation technique. Especially this cultivation technique, escape. If he successfully cultivated it he could use it to harm others. Thinking about this, Zhou Xian laughed even louder. Cultivate. Zhou Xian immediately started cultivating. This cultivation technique wasn't difficult. The only difficulty was that it required a large amount of spirit energy or top-grade spirit stones. And he had 800 million top-grade spirit stones. And his comprehension wasn't low. In fact, it was quite high. Adding on the fact that he had reached Sword Emperor and had a certain understanding of space, he cultivated very quickly. In just one night he could enter space. However, his aura couldn't be completely concealed. It was only the entry level. However, this was enough to make Zhou Xian very excited. As if thinking of something, Zhou Xian suddenly left the prison pagoda and went to Mo Yunqi's room. At this moment, Mo Yunqi was meditating and cultivating. Suddenly, bang. The table in front of Mo Yunqi shattered. Mo Yunqi jumped out of his bed and looked around warily. Who is it? There was no movement. Mo Yunqi frowned. He was still very cautious. Just as he was about to put on his shoes and go out, he found that one of his shoes was missing. Stealing shoes? Mo Yunqi blinked. He was a little confused. In Bai Zai's room, Bai Zai was sleeping. Suddenly, the sole of a shoe hit his face. Bai Zai woke up with a start. There was a shoe print on his face. Bai Zai was stunned. Then he looked at the shoe in his arms. In the next moment he was furious. Mo Yunqi, are you asking for a beating? Saying that, he jumped out of bed and went straight to Mo Yunqi's room. P.S. Today I saw an advertisement on the street. Pay a lot to get a child. As long as you go I will give you 2 million as a deposit. Brothers, wait for my news. If I don't update tomorrow, please bless me. Chapter 246. Not long after Bai Zai rushed into Mo Yunqi's room, the sounds of fighting came from the mountain. Soon Bai Zai chased Mo Yunqi all over the mountain. Bai Zai, are you crazy? I didn't hit you. Mo Yunqi, don't run if you have the guts. I'll run. Come and chase me. Meanwhile, the culprit Zhou Xian came to the 5th floor master's room. Inside the room, Zhou Xian and the 5th floor master sat facing each other. Zhou Xian took out a storage ring and placed it in front of the 5th floor master. Auction them all. The 5th floor master scanned the storage ring with his divine sense. When he saw the items in the storage ring, his expression changed slightly. There's so many. As he said this, he looked at Zhou Xian with a trace of disbelief in his eyes. Zhou Xian nodded. Sell these items in batches. Don't gather them all together. The 5th floor master said, you don't want to attract attention? Zhou Xian nodded. That should be fine, right? The 5th floor master smiled. Of course. The old man will personally make a trip to the divine central continent. These are all practical items and will sell well. Zhou Xian smiled. That's for the best. By the way, senior, how many supreme grade spirit stones would it normally cost to hire a true defensive magic realm expert? The 5th floor master thought for a moment and then said, about 200 million. 200 million. Zhou Xian was stunned and blurted out, so cheap? The 5th floor master smiled bitterly. It's not cheap. 200 million supreme grade spirit stones. Even in the divine central continent, a second-rate force would find it difficult to take out so many. Zhou Xian thought for a moment then nodded. Indeed, the reason why he felt that it was cheap now was because he had obtained the hundreds of storage rings and the treasures of the 2 true defensive spell realm powerhouses. Without these treasures he would actually be very poor himself. The 5th floor master suddenly asked, you want to hire a true defensive magic realm expert? Zhou Xian nodded. Senior, after you go to the central divine prefecture, please help me look around. Price isn't a problem, but they must be strong enough. The 5th floor master hesitated for a moment and then he said, If your strength hasn't attained the true control Dharma realm, then I'm afraid it's easier to invite them than to send them away. Yi Xian nodded. This is also a problem. The fifth floor master said in a low voice, how about this? I'll go sell these treasures first. As for hiring a true defensive Dharma realm expert, I'll look around first. If there's someone suitable, we'll hire him. What do you think? Yi Xian smiled and said, that would be for the best. The fifth floor master smiled, let's not waste any more time. Old man, let's go now. With that he got up and left. In the room Yi Xian took a sip of tea. At this moment Lu Jioge came to the door. Everything is ready. Yi Xian nodded and put down the teacup. Let's go. With that he got up and walked out of the room. An hour later Yi Xian led 100 Blue Wave Dao soldiers out of the city. At this moment the 100 Blue Wave Dao soldiers behind him had completely changed. All of them were equipped with high-grade truth-grade equipment. And they were armed to the teeth. Even in the divine central continent, this cavalry was considered the best of the best. Mo Yunqi, Bai Zhe and Jian Chuchu stood beside Yi Xian. Jian Chuchu had reached the Sword Master realm now, so she didn't feel any pressure when fighting against Dharma realm experts. Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi were also strong enough to fight against Dharma realm experts. Coupled with the top-notch equipment that Yi Xian had given them, both of them had the strength to kill Dharma realm experts. Behind them, over 100 Blue Wave Dao soldiers had the strength to easily kill Dharma realm experts. Not to mention Dharma realm experts, even if all 100 of them joined forces, they wouldn't be able to defeat Yi Xian. Because these 100 Blue Wave Dao soldiers attacked. This chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page. Moreover, these Blue Wave Dao soldiers had already cultivated the murderous aura technique to the extreme. Once the murderous aura appeared, their combat strength would increase by at least 30% to 40%. It could be said that if they used the murderous aura technique, every 5 Blue Wave Dao soldiers could kill one Dharma realm expert. And if all 100 of them joined forces, they could easily kill a Dharma defending realm expert. Under Yi Xian's crazy feeding, these Blue Wave Dao soldiers had matured. More than 100 people left the city in a grandiose manner, but before long a group of people blocked their way. This group of people was Mad Lion and the others. Mad Lion and King glanced at the people behind Yi Xian. Both of them were shocked because the strength of these Blue Wave Dao soldiers had exceeded their expectations. Especially their equipment, they were actually all high-grade truth-grade equipment, the same as the mercenaries behind them. The problem was there were more than 100 people. 100 sets of high-grade truth-grade equipment. Mad Lion and the others were extremely shocked at this moment. At this moment, if they still had some doubts about Yi Xian's identity before, then those doubts had practically vanished now. Because Yi Xian's strength alone couldn't possibly be so wealthy. Not to mention Yi Xian, even ordinary forces couldn't be so wealthy. There was definitely someone behind Yi Xian. This was the conclusion Mad Lion and King came to. Mad Lion cupped his fists. Brother Yi, we've thought it through and are willing to cooperate with you. Yi Xian smiled. You're most welcome. He pointed to the right as he spoke. 3 of you, let's go to a small city a few hundred kilometers away. There are more than 100 cultivators from the divine central continent there, and they have at least 50 million top-grade spirit stones. Which one of you is willing to go? Mad Lion laughed. Then let my Mad Lion mercenary group go. Yi Xian nodded. If there's any danger, remember to notify me via voice transmission. Mad Lion cupped his fists. Brother Yi, see you later. With that, Mad Lion left with the Mad Lion mercenary group behind him. Yi Xian rode the black flame horse up to the king and the veiled woman. He pointed to the left. There's a nation called the Yu Nation over there. There are at least several thousand cultivators from the divine central continent in the Yu Nation right now, and they have at least 100 million top-grade spirit stones. Are you too interested? 100 million top-grade spirit stones. The king looked at the veiled woman but she didn't speak. The king turned to look at Yi Xian. I'll go. With that he turned and led the dozen or so people behind him away. Only the veiled woman and the 8 people behind her remained. Yi Xian faced the veiled woman. She raised her lily-white hand and gestured to the people behind her. The 9 people behind her bowed slightly and retreated. Yi Xian tilted his head. Mo Yunqi understood and turned to leave with the Blue Waves Dao soldiers, Witzard and the others. Only the 2 of them remained. The veiled woman looked straight at Zhou Xian. If your plan is just to deal with these cultivators from the divine central continent, then there's no need for us to work together. Zhou Xian asked, do you think the meat is too small? The veiled woman nodded. Too small. Zhou Xian smiled. As far as I know, there are at least 100,000 cultivators from the divine central continent in Azure province. Moreover, the number is still increasing. The veiled woman shook her head. Still too small. Zhou Xian frowned slightly. Your appetite seems to be a little too big. The veiled woman looked at Zhou Xian. If you have ability, your appetite will naturally be big. Ability? Zhou Xian smiled. How big? The veiled woman did not speak. She suddenly opened her hand and twirled it. In an instant, dense blood-red threads appeared around Zhou Xian. These threads were like a blood net that enveloped Zhou Xian's entire body. In the next moment, these blood-red threads contracted and were about to crush Zhou Xian to pieces. Zhou Xian's face was expressionless. Just as the blood-red threads were about to touch his body, a sword intent suddenly surged out of his body. Malevolent thoughts, this chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. Sword intent. With the appearance of the malevolent thought sword intent, the blood-red threads began to corrode and then were annihilated. At this moment, the veiled woman made a light seal with her hand, and Zhou Xian slashed forward with his sword. Boom! Zhou Xian instantly retreated over 30 meters. As soon as he stopped, the ground beneath his feet collapsed and spread for nearly 1,000 meters. Zhou Xian looked up at the veiled woman. A trace of blood slowly seeped out of the corner of his mouth, and there was an obvious blood-red sword mark on the veiled woman's palm. Law-controlling realm. Zhou Xian was a little shocked. The veiled woman in front of him was not at the law-controlling realm, but the law-controlling realm. Moreover, she was more powerful than any law-controlling realm expert he had seen before. The veiled woman looked at the sword mark on her hand and then looked up at Zhou Xian. Not bad. Zhou Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. What is your purpose? The veiled woman walked in front of Zhou Xian. In this chaotic world, of course, it is to seek wealth. Zhou Xian smiled. If I stay here, I will get endless wealth. Moreover, the Devil sect and the Ghost sect are already on their way to Qingzhou. If I take over these two sects, I will have enough resources for half a lifetime. The veiled woman looked Zhou Xian in the eye. The Devil sect has more than 10 true magical realm experts. The Ghost sect is not weak either. Do you think you can take them down with your current strength? Zhou Xian said seriously. I have someone behind me. The veiled woman didn't speak. Zhou Xian smiled. Think about it. Once you've made up your mind, you can come to me at any time. I welcome you here at any time. Even if you don't want to cooperate, it's fine. We can't do business together. The veiled woman wanted to say more, but Zhou Xian shook his head. There's no need to say more. If you want to cooperate, stay. If you don't, you can leave at any time. With that, he turned around and left. The veiled woman suddenly said, You are not a member of the Realm Defense Alliance at all. Zhou Xian stopped. After a short pause, he said with a smile, Anyway, I have someone behind me. If you want to get rich, then follow me. I will guarantee you at least 100 million supreme-grade spirit stones a month. The veiled woman said, Give me 300 million a month. Zhou Xian asked, What can you give me? The veiled woman said indifferently, I will take care of the Devil sect, the Ghost sect, and the Dharma realm experts from the divine central continent. You deal with those above and below you. Zhou Xian was silent for a moment and then he said, Deal. Go into hiding and wait for my notice. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his finger, and a spatial ring flew over to the veiled woman. Use it for now. The veiled woman glanced at it, and there were 100 million supreme-grade spirit stones within it. She put the spatial ring away, turned around and left. But right at this moment, a black figure suddenly appeared in front of the veiled woman. The veiled woman stopped and the black figure said in a low voice, Young miss, why didn't you kill him? Once he's dead, my Devil sect will be able to swiftly take control of the entire Pine Prefecture. The veiled woman glanced at the black figure and said, Would I hold back if I could kill him? He didn't use his full strength just now. If I continue to attack, I will only alert him and arouse his suspicion. In this way, it's better to stay by his side and figure out his ability so that I can give him a lethal blow at the critical moment. The black-clothed man nodded. Young miss is very considerate. The veiled woman said, tell my father to be careful of the person behind him." As soon as she finished speaking, her figure shook and vanished. The black-clothed man turned around and left as well. Around 10 minutes later, the space where the veiled woman had been standing suddenly trembled, and then a figure appeared there. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian spoke softly, "Fortunately I was cautious, otherwise I would have been tricked. Right, young miss?" When he spoke up to this point, he seemed to have thought of something, and the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up slightly as he revealed a naughty smile. End of this chapter. Chapter 247. Yi Xian led Mo Yunqi and the others as they dashed through the mountain range. They were swift like the wind, and everywhere they passed was a sea of flames. Clean up. Yi Xian's objective this time was to clean up the cultivators of the divine central continent from the neighboring countries of Jiang country. These people were like malignant tumors. Only by cleaning them up would he be able to resist the devil sect and ghost sect that were about to enter Azure Prefecture. 2 hours later, Yi Xian led Mo Yunqi and the others to a small city at the border of Jiang country. At this moment there weren't many people left in the city, and it was extremely desolate. The spiritual energy in Azure Prefecture was decreasing, and the living environment was worsening. Coupled with the barbaric invasion of the cultivators of the divine central continent, many empty cities had appeared even in Jiang country. Some cities were empty because people ran away, and some were empty because of people. Outside the city, Yi Xian looked up at the city wall. There were corpses hanging above the city gate, and there were at least a few hundred of them. These people were hanging on the city wall, and some of them were still bleeding. Obviously they had just been hung there. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings turned icy cold when they witnessed this scene. Mo Yunqi, who stood by Yi Xian's side, said in a low voice, "Military advisor Lu sent a voice transmission. There are hundreds of cultivators from the divine central continent gathered in the city. They've already occupied the city and are using it as a stronghold. They go out to plunder every day." Yi Xian nodded. "Is an hour enough?" Mo Yunqi chuckled. "You underestimate us." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand. "Brothers, charge." As soon as he finished speaking, over 100 people charged into the city. Meanwhile, a man ran out of the city gate with quick steps, and he was furious. "Who are all of you?" Before he could finish speaking, a flying dagger had pierced through the man's forehead. Over 100 cavalrymen charged into the city like a torrent, and it didn't take long for the sounds of fighting and shrill cries to resound from within the city. Outside the city, Yi Xian leaned against the side of the city gate with his arms crossed and a strand of grass in his mouth. He seemed slightly sloppy. In less than half an hour, Mo Yunqi led 100 Blue Waves cavalrymen out of the city. And in an open space in the city, there were already several hundred corpses piled up. And at this moment, these several hundred corpses were burning. Outside the city, Mo Yunqi took out a storage ring and handed it to Yi Xian. There are over 90 million supreme-grade spirit stones and some miscellaneous items. The total value is around 40 million. Saying this, he shook his head slightly. These people are really rich. Who knows how many people they've robbed? Yi Xian put away the storage ring and asked in a soft voice, "Is there anyone else in the city?" Mo Yunqi nodded. "There are some, but not many. We've already made arrangements." Yi Xian nodded. "Let's go." Soon more than 100 people turned around and left. On the way, beside Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi suddenly said, "Bandit Yi, I heard that the Kanglan province has already become the Death province. Do you think this Azure province will be the same as the Kanglan province?" Yi Xian said, "Do you want Qingzhou to become like that?" Mo Yunqi shook his head. "No matter what, this is our home after all." Speaking up to here, he hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Earlier in the city I saw many corpses, and most of them belonged to the people of the city. If our imperial capital falls one day, I'm afraid that our state of Jiang and our Blue Waves Academy will." Yi Xian chuckled. "It's nothing. Think about it. Because if they don't die, then we die." Mo Yunqi was silent for a while, then grinned. "That's true. If they don't die, then we die. Fuck them." Soon the group disappeared at the end of the horizon. While Yi Xian and the others were frantically cleaning up, within the Great Cloud territory, a mysterious army was also frantically cleaning up the cultivators of the divine central continent. At first, these cultivators from the divine central continent began to resist, but gradually they began to flee. Because they found that they couldn't beat them at all. Even some Dharma-controlling realm experts died inexplicably and miserably, and their corpses were hung on the city walls as a warning to the public. At this moment, these cultivators from the divine central continent suddenly realized that Zhou Xian and Lian Wanli were countless times stronger than they'd imagined. Especially on Zhou Xian's side, besides his own Blue Waves Dao soldiers, there were 2 other mercenary groups assisting him. These 2 mercenary groups worked extremely hard because it was truly too profitable. 2 days later, these cultivators from the divine central continent started to retreat towards Myriad Mounds Mountain. Because no matter where they hid in Qingzhou, someone would come looking for them. The roles of the hunter and the hunted had changed. In less than 2 days, Zhou Xian and Lian Wanli had practically driven all the cultivators from the divine central continent back to Myriad Mounds Mountain. Even if some remained, they were terrified out of their wits and didn't dare come out at all. Qingzhou gradually started to stabilize, but the spirit energy was still slowly decreasing. Blue Waves Academy within the prison pagoda. Zhou Xian sat cross-legged on the ground, and a spatial ring floated in front of him. Inside the spatial ring was his harvest from the past 2 days. There were more than 600 million supreme-grade spirit stones, and in addition to his original 700 million, he now had 1 billion supreme-grade spirit stones on him alone. If he sold all the things he'd given to the 5th floor master, he would have several billion supreme-grade spirit stones at the very least. Even some first-rate forces of the divine central continent couldn't compare to his current wealth. He was too rich. Zhou Xian put away the spatial ring and began to cultivate. This time he wasn't cultivating his sword skills or comprehending the way of the sword, but comprehending his realm. The Dharma realm. His current goal was the Dharma realm. And the Dharma realm couldn't be reached just by devouring swords. After reaching the divine unity realm, any realm required comprehension. Of course, he also needed to devour swords. Both were indispensable. Right now, he naturally didn't have to worry about swords. He already had many swords on him, and he even had 2 heaven-grade swords. As for comprehension, it wasn't difficult for him because he had already reached the Sword Emperor realm and had a certain understanding of space itself. Could be said that he was just short of time. Space. Zhou Xian didn't have a deep understanding of space and he hadn't studied it seriously. However, he'd borrowed the power of space when he'd reached the Sword Emperor realm. In other words, he'd touched the threshold. Zhou Xian closed his eyes and carefully sensed everything around him. He calmed his heart and cleared his mind of distracting thoughts. At this moment, a sword suddenly appeared in front of him, and it didn't take long for a sword aura to emanate from it. This sword aura was precisely the power of space that he'd borrowed. He was currently using the sword as a medium to carefully sense space. It didn't take him long to touch it. Although he couldn't see space, he could feel it. However, how to borrow, use, and control space was another matter altogether. If he could control space, then he would truly reach the Dharma realm. His goal was naturally the Dharma realm. Time trickled by in the pagoda. Myriad Hills Mountain Azure State Path. More and more people were running out of the boundless mountain range. They were all cultivators of the divine central continent who'd escaped from Azure State. With Zhou Xian and Lian Wanli in Azure State, they couldn't stay any longer. Especially Zhou Xian's Blue Waves Academy, they'd practically gone mad as they chased after them. They had no choice but to retreat. However, an old man stood at the entrance of Azure State Path, and he blocked everyone's path. A man walked up to the old man with a slightly fearful expression. "You are." The old man glanced at the crowd. "Are you willing to return to the divine central continent with your tails between your legs?" The man shook his head. "So what if I'm not? Zhou Xian's Blue Waves Academy isn't something we can resist at all." The old man looked at the man. "Do you want revenge?" The man frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" The old man spoke indifferently. "I'm an elder of the Devil Sect. I've come to tell all of you that my Devil Sect will enter Azure State in a few days. At that time, all of Azure State will belong to my Devil Sect. As for Zhou Xian, my Devil Sect will deal with him." The Devil Sect. An uproar arose in the surroundings when they heard this. The Devil Sect was a true top-rate power in the divine central continent. Even Kuraki Academy, the Dark Dimension, and even the Chill North Sect couldn't compare to it. Many people started to feel excited. If the Devil Sect entered Azure State, then it meant that someone would be able to deal with Zhou Xian and Lian Wanli. When he saw the crowd become restless, the old man continued, Everyone, Azure State doesn't belong to Yi Xian, it belongs to all of you. Moreover, there's no enmity between all of you, yet he's obstructing your path to wealth. It's like killing one's father, so how can you let it go? Besides that, Yi Xian is on the wanted list. Eliminating him is to uphold justice in the world. The man who stood before the old man spoke in a low voice. But those Darkwave Dao soldiers. The old man smiled. Don't worry, my devil sect will deal with those Darkwave Dao soldiers of Yi Xian. As he spoke, he glanced at a certain person in the crowd. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from within the crowd. Since the devil sect is taking the lead, then what do we have to fear? Everyone kill Yi Xian and wash away the humiliation we suffered. As soon as this voice resounded, the crowd instantly became restless once more. And it didn't take long for numerous voices to resound incessantly. Kill Yi Xian and bathe Pine Prefecture in blood. An imperceptible arc curled up on the corners of the old man's mouth when he saw their expressions. He raised his hands and pressed them down lightly, and then the surroundings fell silent. The old man glanced at them and said, I'll have to trouble all of you to notify each other and gather here. At that time, we'll enter Pine Prefecture together and eliminate Yi Xian. Alright. Countless people in the crowd responded, and it didn't take long for many to turn around and leave. Just like that, as the cultivators of the divine central continent notified each other, more and more people rushed towards Myriad Hill Mountain to gather. In less than a day, tens of thousands of people had gathered at Myriad Hill Mountain, and most of them were at the Divine Combination Realm. There were many at the Myriad Dharma Realm. There were Dharma-controlling realm cultivators as well. But there weren't many of them, only a dozen or so. At the same time, almost 100 enormous cloud ships were approaching Pine Prefecture. The Devil Sect. The Ghost Sect. Blue Waves Academy. Within the prison pagoda, Yi Xian, who sat cross-legged on the ground, suddenly withdrew a high-grade truth rank sword, and then he stabbed it into his chest. Bang! A powerful aura instantly surged out from his body. Chapter 248. Breakthrough to the Dharma Realm. He was currently at the Divine Combination Realm. If he reached the Dharma Realm, he would be able to fight back even if he faced a true defense realm cultivator. If he reached the true 10,000 Dharma Realm, he would be able to fight even a true defense realm cultivator. Devour. Yi Xian began to devour the truth grade swords madly. In just a short while, apart from the Spirit Elegance sword, all the other true grade swords on his body had been devoured cleanly. Now he was only left with 3 swords. 2 heaven-grade swords and the exquisite sword. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and was silent for a long time. Finally, he waved his right hand and the exquisite sword appeared in his palm. Feeling the exquisite sword in his hand, Yi Xian felt rather complicated. Even after devouring so many heaven-grade swords, the exquisite sword had yet to break through and reach heaven-grade. However, it had reached the limits of truth-grade superior grade. It would be difficult to progress further by devouring swords without any special fortuitous encounters. If he devoured heaven-grade swords now, he would definitely be able to reach the Dharma realm. However, the exquisite sword would definitely be destroyed. He did not want to destroy the exquisite sword. This sword had been with him since the beginning, so he could not bear to devour it just like that. At that moment, the exquisite sword seemed to have sensed something and trembled slightly as if it was expressing something. Yi Xian said softly, "You're saying to use a heaven-grade sword as a dantian?" The Lingxiu sword trembled in response. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "That's possible." As if he had thought of something, his expression instantly turned bitter. Using a sword as a dantian meant that he would have to experience the pain of using a sword as a dantian for the first time. That pain was still fresh in his memory. However, he had no choice. Changing swords. Yi Xian took out the Heaven's Thunder Sword. "You already have intelligence. I'll let you choose. If you're willing to be my dantian, nod. If not, shake your head." The Heaven's Thunder Sword did not respond. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "If you're my dantian, you can devour countless swords in the future. It'll be extremely beneficial to you. As for me, even if I have new swords in the future, I won't devour you." After a moment of silence, the Heaven's Thunder Sword trembled slightly. Nod. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. If the sword didn't agree to it, there was nothing he could do. Because he didn't dare to force this sword to be his dantian. One had to know that this sword was his dantian. If it wasn't willing, it would retaliate and he would be played to death. After obtaining the Heaven's Thunder Sword's approval, Xian immediately inserted the sword into his body. Boom. Xian raised his head abruptly. His facial features were twisted and the veins on his neck bulged like tiny snakes. It was an incomparably terrifying sight. At this moment he truly felt the might of a heaven-rank sword. This sword was much stronger than the Xianxia sword from back then. His body was almost shattered by this sword's strike. Boom. Meanwhile, a strand of sword intent suddenly appeared around him. Kindness sword will. The sword will of kindness enveloped his entire body. The moment the sword will of kindness appeared, he instantly felt a little better. However, his body was still trembling violently. Xian hastily circulated the invincible sword body technique, and the sky thunder sword gradually calmed down. Time passed bit by bit. Within Grey Wave Hall, there were only 3 people in the hall: Lu Jioge, Feng Lan, and Mo Yuan. Lu Jioge picked up a teacup and took a small sip, then said, "What do you think of the current situation?" Mo Yuan shook his head. "It's complicated." Feng Lan nodded. "It is indeed complicated. It's extremely unusual for the Realm Defense Alliance to put him on the wanted list because they could have personally taken action, but they didn't. There are 2 possibilities. The first is that the Realm Defense Alliance doesn't dare to kill him and wants to use someone else to do it. The second is that the Realm Defense Alliance wants to use him to attract even more cultivators from the Divine Central Continent to Azure Province." At this point, the 3 of them looked at each other and there was a trace of shock in their eyes. A moment later, Lu Jioge sneered. "Looks like the Realm Defense Alliance wants the origin heart of Azure Province. I just don't know why they want it." Feng Lan said solemnly, "It probably isn't anything good. The Realm Defense Alliance seems to be protecting the Azure Firmament world, but they actually have other intentions. However, it's a bit too cruel to sacrifice the countless lives of 2 provinces." "Cruel?" Lu Jioge smiled. "Brother Mo Yuan, in the eyes of those lofty cultivators, all living things in the world are as lowly as ants." Feng Lan sighed softly. "Then here comes the problem. The Realm Defense Alliance wants Azure Province destroyed, and Xian clearly wants to protect Azure Province. In other words, he wants to fight the Realm Defense Alliance head-on." Lu Jioge said softly, "From the looks of it, he's already prepared to fight the Realm Defense Alliance." As she spoke, she looked at Feng Lan and Mo Yuan. "What do you 2 think?" Mo Yuan smiled bitterly. "What else can we think? The 2 of us have placed all our hopes on him. Naturally, we'll follow him to the end." Lu Jioge nodded. "Then everyone will have to reveal some of their trump cards." Mo Yuan nodded slightly. "We've already made our preparations. However, it mainly depends on that boy. If the person behind him can't stop the Realm Defense Alliance, it won't matter even if we reveal our trump cards." Lu Jioge smiled. "Then let's wait and see." As she spoke, she raised her head and looked outside the hall. "Whether the military path and the Confucian path can rise again depends on this." Mo Yuan smiled. "We'll go all out." The corners of Lu Jioge's mouth curled up slightly. "We'll go all out." Wuxia Mountain. At this moment, nearly 50,000 cultivators from the Divine Central Continent had gathered at Wuxia Mountain. Some of them had fled from Azure Province, while others had rushed over from the Divine Central Continent. At this moment, these people had gathered together for only one purpose: to kill Xian. These people hated Xian to the bone. Originally, they were able to do whatever they wanted in the Qingzhou, but now they were unable to do anything. It could be said that after staying in Azure Province for a month, they would have cultivation resources for the next few decades when they returned. However, because of Xian, all their plans were ruined. Not only that, but Xian had also robbed them. Although tens of thousands of people had gathered, they still didn't enter Azure Province to find Xian. Wait. They were all waiting for the arrival of the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect. Without these 2 top forces, they wouldn't dare to find Xian. Now everyone was afraid of Xian and his Grey Billow Dao soldiers. Time passed bit by bit. Finally, at dusk, hundreds of cloud ships stopped outside Azure Province. On the giant cloud ship in the lead, there was a black flag that was more than 30 meters long. On it were 2 large black words: Devil Sect. On the right side of this cloud ship was another similarly large cloud ship. There was also a flag on that cloud ship. However, this flag was red in color. The Ghost Sect. Under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, more than 5,000 people jumped off the cloud ship. They were led by a middle-aged man and a beautiful woman in a red dress. These two people were the Devil Sex Sect Master Ku Mingxiu and the Ghost Sex Sect Master Ji Yannu. Both of them were true defensive Dharma realm experts. Ku Mingxiu looked into the distance. After a while he suddenly chuckled. Azure Province. To the Ghost Sect and the Blood Sect, it's undoubtedly a cultivation paradise. Ji Yannu smiled and said, "You're right. However, don't forget that Azure Province doesn't belong to us for now." Ku Mingxiu's smile gradually disappeared. That Yi Xian isn't as simple as he seems. Back then, a true defensive Dharma realm expert from the Situ clan and an honorable from the Dark World joined forces to kill him. Unfortunately, there's no news about them now, as if they had disappeared from the world. However, he's still alive and well. Ji Yannu nodded and the smile on her face disappeared. I'm afraid there's more than just one sword immortal behind this person. And this Realm Protection Alliance, they didn't do it themselves this time. Instead, they're borrowing our sect's hands. It's very unusual. Ku Mingxiu said softly, although we know that they have ulterior motives, our sects can't reject their conditions. Ji Yannu nodded because the Realm Protection Alliance's condition was that the entire Azure Province would belong to the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect. They could do whatever they wanted. The entire Azure Province. The condition was too tempting. The two sects couldn't reject it at all. Because once they took control of Azure Province, the Realm Protection Alliance wouldn't interfere. To them, the entire Azure Province would be theirs to do whatever they wanted. To the Devil Cultivators, it was undoubtedly a holy land for cultivation. Ku Mingxiu suddenly said, "The sword immortal behind Yi Xian. Is there still no information about her?" Ji Yannu said in a deep voice, "No. I've asked Li Qing, the dean of Kuraki Academy. He kept his mouth shut about the sword immortal." Kept his mouth shut. Ku Mingxiu frowned slightly. What? Ji Yannu shook her head. I don't know. However, there's one thing we need to take note of. That Yi Xian destroyed Azure Province's Kuraki Academy, but I invited him to Azure Province to deal with Yi Xian. However, he rejected it directly. Obviously he's afraid of something. Ku Mingxiu narrowed his eyes. It seems like the person behind Yi Xian isn't simple. But it doesn't matter. Even if the person behind him is a sword immortal, it doesn't matter if she doesn't show herself. If she dares to show herself, my devil sect will refine her body into human jerky and hang it on the mountain gate of my devil sect. My devil sect is determined to take over Azure Province. The corner of Ji Yannu's mouth curled up into a foxy smile. Count my ghost sect in. Ku Mingxiu laughed. Let's go to Azure Province and meet this sword immortal. Let's see if she has 3 heads and 6 arms. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and thousands of people marched towards Azure Province. Behind these thousands of people were tens of thousands of cultivators from the Divine Central Continent. The invasion of Azure Province by the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect swept across the entire Azure Province like a swarm of locusts. For a moment, the entire Azure Province was in chaos again. Blue Waves Academy. The door to Yi Xian's room suddenly opened. After a while, Yi Xian walked out of his room. Yi Xian looked up at the sky and greedily took a deep breath. Mice. At this moment, Lu Jioga arrived in front of Yi Xian in a wheelchair. She glanced at Yi Xian and said, "There's something I need to know." Yi Xian said, "Speak." Lu Jioga said, "You wanted me to unite the sects and aristocratic families in Azure Province. 36 aristocratic families and 27 sects. Only one aristocratic family is willing to join forces with us. Not only that, some aristocratic families and sects in Jiang Province have already quietly left." Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, "Why?" Lu Jioga said softly, "There are rumors in the country that you have attracted the Ghost Sect and the Devil Sect. These cultivators of the Divine Central Continent came to Azure Province because of you. Also, these aristocratic families, sects and some cultivators think that the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect are only targeting you and that it has nothing to do with them." Yi Xian did not speak. P.S. Recently, Zongheng will be holding a poll for the best author and the best work. Please vote for me, the best author. Lastly, it's a lie to ask for children with a lot of money. By the way, introduce me to a rich woman. I want to struggle for 20 years less. Chapter 249. Yi Xian didn't speak for a long time. In his opinion, given the situation in Azure Province, everyone should naturally work together to face it. After all, how could there be an intact egg when the nest was overturned? But he had greatly underestimated the selfishness of human nature. Selfishness. This was the deep-rooted inferiority of humans. Everyone was selfish and so was Yi Xian. However, he understood that sometimes he couldn't be selfish. The invasion of Azure Province by the Divine Central Continent was akin to a country being invaded by foreign enemies. At a time like this, if someone still held the thought that it had nothing to do with them, then that person was undoubtedly very stupid. If they didn't join forces to resist now, then they wouldn't have the ability to resist in the future. If they watched others die now, then others would watch them die in the future. If the country was in trouble, then everyone had a responsibility. Lu Jioge said softly, "These people still hope that the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent entered Azure Province because of you. As long as you, Yi Xian, die, everything will be peaceful. Unfortunately, they don't understand that if you die, they will die even faster and more miserably." Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "Let them be." Lu Jioge glanced at Yi Xian. "You're not angry?" Yi Xian retorted. "Why should I be angry?" Lu Jioge looked at Yi Xian and said nothing. Yi Xian smiled. "I, Yi Xian, want to protect Azure Province, but I can't ask everyone to protect it. What I can do is to unite those who are willing to protect this land. As for those who don't want to come, it's fine. This is their own choice, so let them be." Speaking up to this point, his smile gradually faded. "However, make a note of all the clans and sects that are unwilling to come. From now on, as long as it is my territory, I will not allow them to appear. Apart from that, these clans and sects will no longer be protected by the deep blue Dao soldiers." Lu Jioge nodded slightly. "I understand. The Devil Sect and Ghost Sect have already entered Azure Province and are heading straight for our country of Jiang. How do you plan to deal with them?" Yi Xian smiled but said nothing. Lu Jioge stared at Yi Xian. "What do you mean?" Yi Xian pointed at his own face and laughed. "Idiot, can't you see that I'm smiling? What I mean is to face it with a smile." With that, he laughed and turned around to leave. Lu Jioge. Yi Xian arrived at the back of the mountain. He walked to the edge of a cliff and stood on the edge. The mountain breeze blew and it was very cool. An old man suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian. It was Situ Ming. Situ Ming glanced at Yi Xian and said, "How are you going to deal with the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect coming this time?" Yi Xian said, "Tell me about their lineup." Situ Ming said solemnly, "There are 6 true Sovereign Realm cultivators and at least 20 Dharma Sovereign Realm cultivators. Apart from that, there are about 40 Dharma Sovereign Realm cultivators and close to 200 Divine Union Realm cultivators. Also, both sects have their own Dao soldiers. I don't know how many of them there are, but they are no weaker than your Blue Billow Dao soldiers." Yi Xian asked, "That's it?" Situ Ming shook his head. "Sects like the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect naturally have their own trump cards. As for what they are, I don't know." Saying this, he looked at Yi Xian and asked, "How are you going to deal with them?" Yi Xian was silent for a moment and said, "I'll leave the true sovereign realm to you. Leave the rest to me." Situ Ming said solemnly, "We'll take care of the true sovereign realm cultivators. But for now, even if we take care of the true sovereign realm cultivators of the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect, you won't be able to stop them." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Then can I surrender?" Situ Ming's face turned cold. At this moment Yi Xian grinned and said, "Don't be angry, I'm just joking. I know that even if I surrender, they won't let me go." Situ Ming said coldly, "It's good that you know that." Yi Xian looked up at the sky and said softly, "I'll say it again. You take care of the true sovereign realm cultivators of the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect. Leave the rest to me." Situ Ming glanced at Yi Xian and said, "Then let's wait and see." Saying this, he turned around and disappeared. Not long after Situ Ming left, Mo Yuan came behind Yi Xian and took out a box and handed it to Yi Xian. Inside the box were the 12 metal colossi. Yi Xian took the box. Mo Yuan said, "I've strengthened the 12 metal colossi with my Confucian talent. They are completely different from before. If they are activated, they can even resist true sovereign realm cultivators. However, it will cost at least 10 million supreme-grade spirit stones to activate each time." 10 million. Yi Xian nodded slightly and said, "It's not expensive." Mo Yuan looked Yi Xian in the eye and said, "It's 10 million each." Xian's hand trembled and he almost threw the box away. Activating the 12 metal colossi once would cost at least 120 million, Mo Yuan said. It should be useful at a critical moment. Xian smiled bitterly and said, of course it's useful, but it really consumes too many spirit stones. Mo Yuan patted Xian's shoulder and said, it's fine. You have a lot of spirit stones anyway. Saying this he turned and left. Xian was speechless. After Mo Yuan left, Xian stood alone for a while. After an unknown amount of time, Xian took out a voice transmission talisman, Azure Province. The Devil Sect and Ghost Sect had led tens of thousands of people to the state of Jiang. The entire Azure Province was saying that the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect had come to Azure Province because of Xian. If not for Xian, the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect as well as the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent would not have come to Azure Province. As the news spread, some people in various parts of Azure Province actually asked for Xian to die and protect Azure Province. Such voices grew more and more, and in the end even the state of Jiang had such voices. In the imperial palace of the state of Jiang, Jiang Yuedun sat at the entrance of the hall with a black puppy lying at his feet, and a middle-aged man stood in front of him. He was the king of the state of Jiang. The king of the state of Jiang said in a low voice, there are many voices in Jiang that are unfavorable to little friend Xian. Jiang Yuetian said indifferently, expel them all from the state of Jiang. Also, if any member of the royal family of the state of Jiang does the same, they will all be demoted to commoners and expelled from the state of Jiang. The king of the state of Jiang hesitated for a moment and said, isn't that too extreme? Jiang Yuetian glanced at the king of the state of Jiang. It's too extreme. Could it be that you also think that Qingzhou has become like this because of Xian? The king of the state of Jiang shook his head. Of course not. I presume the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect are behind all these random rumors in Azure Province. Their objective is obviously to cause a grudge between little friend Xian and the cultivators of Azure Province, so that little friend Xian will be isolated by the cultivators of Azure Province. Jiang Yuetian said indifferently, unfortunately, many people don't understand such a simple principle. Or perhaps many people don't want to understand it at all. As he spoke, he raised his head and glanced at the end of the horizon. They have never thought that the Kanglan province has already become the Death province. If Xian dies, the Green province will immediately become the next Kanglan province, and these people in the Green province will live worse than dogs. Send down the order. My state of Jiang fully supports little friend Xian, and we are willing to live and die with him. The king of the state of Jiang bowed slightly and then he turned around and left. Azure Waves Academy. At this moment the atmosphere in Azure Waves Academy was rather heavy because everyone knew that the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect were coming. They weren't ordinary powers, but top-rate powers from the Central Divine Prefecture. The gap in strength between Azure Waves Academy and these two sects was too huge. However, not a single person from Azure Waves Academy left. Because the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect were riding cloud ships, they were very swift, and they had already entered Chu in a short period of a day. Chu immediately surrendered. The Devil Sect and Ghost Sect didn't act rashly. Conversely, they appeased the Chu kingdom, and this action caused the people of Azure Prefecture to be even more certain of one thing, and that was that the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect had come to Azure Prefecture only for the sake of Xian, and they weren't targeting all the cultivators of Azure Prefecture. For a time, the hearts of countless Azure Province cultivators that were hanging in their throats fell. After that, some people started to take pleasure in the misfortune of others. It was especially so for the state of Yu. It directly expressed its stance on the side of the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect, and it wanted to denounce Xian and avenge the humiliation it had suffered. It wasn't just the state of Yu, even some clans and sects had sided with the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect. The Devil Sect and Ghost Sect didn't stop at Chu and they continued forward. With their current speed, it would take them at most 6 hours to reach Jiang country. Azure Waves Academy. Lu Jioga suddenly came to the door of Xian's room. The king of Ning country, Tuoba Yen, has brought 10,000 elites and 100 insignia guards. They are willing to advance and retreat with our Azure Waves Academy. After a moment of silence, Xian's voice came from the room. Got it. At this moment the door suddenly opened and a woman walked in. Inside the room Xian turned to look at the door. The person who came in was not Lu Jioga, but Tuoba Yen. Tuoba Yen was wearing a cloud-white light armor. The light armor was a little tight and her figure was a little curvy. Set off by the light armor, her figure was extremely voluptuous and she looked very hot. Her long black hair was tied up in a ponytail, and in addition to her dignified expression, she looked very heroic. Tuoba Yen walked to the front of Yi Xian, and she just looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian also didn't say anything. After the two of them were in a deadlock for about 7 minutes, Yi Xian took the lead and said, "Have a seat." Tuoba Yen didn't sit down and she just stared at Yi Xian. "You are so angry because of a sentence I said that day?" Yi Xian nodded. "I am a little angry. I went to Ning country just to help you, I didn't have any other intentions." Tuoba Yen lowered her head slightly. "I was wrong about that sentence." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. After hearing Tuoba Yan's words, he suddenly felt that he was a little stingy. However, he was indeed very angry that day because he went to help Tuoba Yen purely because he wanted to help her, and not because he wanted to obtain anything from her. To him, Tuoba Yan's words were a kind of contempt and seriously speaking it was an insult, so he was angry. Tuoba Yen glanced at Yi Xian. "Even if you are angry, you shouldn't be so heartless and leave." Yi Xian said with a straight face, "I was very angry at that time." As he said that, he pointed to his face. "Do you know? With this handsome face of mine, the number of women who covet me can line up from the Azure province to the divine central continent. But you said that I went to help you because of your body. Tell me, how can I not be angry?" "I didn't say that," Tuoba Yen suddenly said. "You did," Yi Xian said seriously. Tuoba Yen looked straight at Yi Xian. "I didn't say that." Yi Xian was about to speak when Tuoba Yen suddenly walked up to him. "Stop talking, kiss me." Yi Xian. Chapter 250. Needless to say, Yi Xian was slightly dazed at this moment. This was because the change in style was too fast. As a man, how could he be so cruel as to refuse a woman's request? Yi Xian was about to bite when Tuoba Yen suddenly turned around and left. He was extremely swift and he vanished from the room in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian's expression froze. Meanwhile, Lu Jioge arrived at the door and she glanced at Yi Xian. "The Devil Sect and Ghost Sect are here." Yi Xian frowned. So fast. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished from the room. Outside the door, Lu Jioge was stunned and then she said softly, "Dharma Realm." More than 200 cloud ships hovered in the sky above the capital of the Jiang country. The cloud ships were arranged in a V shape, forming a dense black mass. On the city wall, Yi Xian stood quietly with his hands behind his back facing the sky. His expression was calm and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry. On the left and right of Yi Xian were Bai Zai, Mo Yunqi and Jianji. Just the four of them. Mo Yunqi looked up at the sky beside Yi Xian and he said softly, "Bandit Yi, there are quite a lot of people here." Bai Zai snorted. "Mo Zimao, are you afraid?" Mo Yunqi glared at Bai Zai. "When have I ever been afraid of anyone?" Bai Zai said indifferently, "Then you go first." Mo Yunqi was expressionless. "I'm not going first." Bai Zai grunted. "You're just afraid of death." Mo Yunqi glanced at Bai Zai. "That's not called being afraid of death, that's called going to die." Bai Zai was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "Save some strength for the two of you. You'll be tired when we start fighting." Mo Yunqi said in a low voice. "Bandit Yi, tell me honestly, do we have any helpers?" Bai Zai also nodded. "Bandit Yi, give us a hint. Let the two of us have some confidence." Yi Xian shook his head. "Without any helpers we can only rely on ourselves." Mo Yunqi's expression froze. Then he walked in front of Yi Xian and said very seriously, "Brother, we will be beaten to death. It's very miserable." Yi Xian said seriously, "Don't worry, justice will prevail." Mo Yunqi's face twitched. Just as he was about to speak, an old man walked down from the cloud ship in the distance. The old man arrived above Yi Xian's head and looked down at Yi Xian's group. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly soared into the sky. In the air, the old man's expression changed drastically. He put his hands together and pressed them down. With this, a powerful force poured out from his palms like a flood. In an instant, the space beneath him began to shake like waves. A fighter of the spell-controlling realm. Under everyone's gazes, a wisp of sword light tore through the air. There was a moment of silence. In the air, a bloody head fell slowly along with a stream of blood. It was an instant kill. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they witnessed this scene. Especially the experts on the cloud ships, their eyes were filled with extreme fear. Xian descended slowly from the sky, and it didn't take long for him to descend onto the city wall. He placed his left hand behind his back while he held the sword in his right hand and swung it horizontally, and a bloody head fell firmly onto the blade of the sword. Xian looked up at the largest cloud ship in the sky and roared with laughter, "Cut the crap. If all of you want to fight, then let's fight." As soon as he finished speaking, his right hand shook slightly, and then the bloody head was instantly tossed into the largest cloud ship in the sky. It didn't take long for the head to fall firmly before the Devil Sect's master Ku Mingxiu and the Ghost Sect's master Jiannu. How arrogant! On more than 200 cloud ships, all the cultivators of the divine central continent were furious. Xian was too arrogant. Countless people rubbed their palms together and were ready to attack at any moment. Even though Xian had killed a fighter at the spell-controlling realm, they weren't afraid. Because there were true spell-controlling realm experts here. Moreover, they had the advantage in numbers. It could be said that they had nothing to fear. If this chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. On the cloud ship, Ku Mingxiu glanced at the head in front of him. There was no anger in his eyes, only seriousness. It was the same for Jiannu. She took a deep look at Xian below. Instant kill. This person is even more monstrous than what we've heard. Ku Mingxiu nodded slightly. Even in the divine central continent, there's no second sword emperor who's this young. This person's background isn't simple. Jiannu said in a deep voice. He's so arrogant because he's fearless. However, we don't know what trump card he has. Could it be that the sword celestial behind him is really that powerful? Ku Mingxiu frowned slightly. Previously, Lord Lu of the Realm Defense Alliance said that the Great Sword Celestial had already left. Jiannu sneered. Do you believe that nonsense? Ku Mingxiu shook his head. He naturally didn't believe it. If there was no one behind Xian, the Realm Defense Alliance definitely wouldn't offer such a high bounty to kill Xian. The Realm Defense Alliance must be afraid of something. If it wasn't for the fact that the Realm Defense Alliance's offer was too tempting, he wasn't prepared to get involved in this mess. Jiannu suddenly said, "What do we do now? Do we take action now?" Ku Mingxiu shook his head. There's no rush. Pass down the order that Xian has violated the rules of the Azure Firmament world and is not tolerated by the Azure Firmament world. The Devil Sect and Ghost Sect are only here to target Xian. As long as the people in the city don't help the tyrant and leave, we won't make things difficult for them. Jiannu's lips curled up slightly. Good plan. This way they'll definitely panic. Ku Mingxiu glanced at Xian below and said, "Continue to investigate and see if there's any other force behind this person apart from the Sword Celestial. Before we completely understand his background, don't take action for the time being." Jiannu nodded. "I'll personally investigate again." After saying that, she turned around and disappeared. Ku Mingxiu lowered his head and looked down. At this moment, Xian and the others had already turned around and left. Looking at Xian, Ku Mingxiu's expression gradually turned cold. This time he was actually taking a huge gamble. Because before he came, he already knew that Xian was not simple. There must be someone behind him, and it might not be an ordinary person. However, he had no choice but to come. The temptation of giving the entire Azure province to the Devil Sect was too great. In the Divine Central Continent, the Devil Daoist sect could not develop unscrupulously. Because the cultivation of the Devil Sect was mostly inhumane and not tolerated by many people. If they were to act recklessly in the Divine Central Continent, they would definitely incur public anger and be suppressed by the Realm Defense Alliance. But in Azure Province, with the Realm Defense Alliance's promise, as long as they killed Xian, the Devil Sect could do whatever they wanted. In at most 5 years, the Devil Sect could become a superforce. Even in the Divine Central Continent, they would be at the top. Because here they could use the resources of the entire Azure province. This was a chance to change the fate of the Devil Sect. Of course, the prerequisite was to get rid of the culprit Xian. Ku Mingxiu slowly closed his eyes and clenched his right hand. This time, if he did not succeed, he would die. Below, on the city wall, beside Xian, Mo Yunqi suddenly said, "Bandit Yi, they don't seem to be doing anything." Xian nodded. "Let's go back first." "Don't care about them?" Mo Yunqi asked. Yi Xian smiled. Don't worry about them for now. After saying that, he turned around and left. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe looked at each other, a trace of curiosity in their eyes. Because Yi Xian was too calm. What kind of trump card did he have? Yi Xian returned to Blue Waves Academy and entered his room. In the room, 3 people were sitting. Mad Lion, King, and the Veiled Woman. The Veiled Woman glanced at Yi Xian but did not speak. Yi Xian sat down and said with a smile, "You 3, if you want to back out now, it is not too late." Mad Lion and King looked at each other, then they looked at the Veiled Woman. The Veiled Woman did not speak. Finally, Mad Lion looked at Yi Xian. "Is your realm-protecting alliance not going to fight?" Yi Xian poured himself a cup of tea and after taking a sip he smiled. "Of course I will fight. Don't worry. This chapter is not finished, please continue. As long as the experts of the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect fight, they will definitely die." The Veiled Woman glanced at Yi Xian. "Really?" Yi Xian nodded. "Really?" The Veiled Woman asked. "Why?" The corner of Yi Xian's mouth rose. "Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. In short, if the 3 of you have no problems, then we can plan what to do next." Mad Lion said solemnly, "If the true experts of the Dharma realm don't fight, we naturally have no fear of the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect. However, with just us and your Dao soldiers, it is far from enough. After all, besides the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect, there are tens of thousands of cultivators of the Divine Central Continent." At this point he looked at Yi Xian. "You should have thought about it." Yi Xian faced Mad Lion. "I have the Realm Protecting Alliance behind me." Mad Lion glanced at Yi Xian. "Big brother, I know you have people behind you. You're strong, okay?" Yi Xian, King suddenly said, "Tell me about your plan." Yi Xian said, "The 2 of you must be ready to fight at any time. When the time comes, your targets will be the Dharma realm experts. Even if you can't kill them, you must restrain them. I've checked and there are almost 52 Dharma realm experts from the 2 sects plus some independent cultivators. Will it be difficult for your 2 mercenary groups to restrain them?" King spoke in a low voice. "Mad Lion and I will attack, it won't be difficult." Mad Lion nodded. Dharma realm experts really weren't a threat to him and King, unless they were true experts of the Dharma realm. Even if they were true experts of the Dharma realm, the 2 of them wouldn't fear them. Yi Xian nodded and then he looked at the Veiled Woman. "As for you, you just have to help me deal with 10 Dharma-controlling realm experts. How about it?" The Veiled Woman pondered for a moment and said, "All right." Yi Xian smiled. "All right, everyone go do what you need to do. Once my people arrive, we'll immediately attack first." People. King and Mad Lion glanced at Yi Xian, and they heaved slight sighs of relief in their hearts. Because Yi Xian still had people, it was fine as long as there were people. The 2 of them got up and left, but the Veiled Woman didn't leave. She looked directly at Yi Xian. "You aren't a member of the Realm Protecting Alliance and you have no help at all. You're just tricking the 3 of us." Yi Xian was silent for a moment and then he sighed softly. "Looks like I can't be complacent anymore. To tell you the truth, I'm the next sect master of the Ancient Sword Sect. My real name is Gu Jianxian." The Veiled Woman narrowed her eyes. Pale Sword Sect is the largest swordsman sect in Qingzhou, and in their sect, who doesn't know that Gu Meihua is the young sect master of the Pale Sword Sect? At this moment Yi Xian suddenly took out the Spirit Elegant Sword, and then he gently separated the 2 swords. Very quickly the 2 swords separated and Yi Xian pointed to the sword on the right. "This sword is the sword of my Pale Sword Sect's founder, the Pale World Sword Master. If I lie to you, I'm not human." Hearing this, the Veiled Woman slowly clenched her fists and she stared at the Spirit Elegant Sword. On the sword, there were 2 words. Heavenly Thunder. At this moment he handed the Spirit Elegant Sword to the Veiled Woman. "If you don't believe me, feel free to investigate. Besides that, I'll tell you something else. This time it's actually a trap set up by the Realm Defense Alliance, my Pale Sword Sect and countless other powers of the Central Divine Continent. It's a trap specially set up for the Ghost Sect and Blood Sect. Their objective is to destroy the Ghost Sect and Devil Sect." Hearing this, the Veiled Woman suddenly stood up and she stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Meanwhile Yi Xian suddenly raised his right hand. "If you don't believe me, then I swear. I swear on my life. If there's any falsehood in what I said just now, then I, Gu Jianxian, will be annihilated and die a horrible death. Swear on his life." The Veiled Woman's gaze was rather solemn. After all, cultivators usually couldn't swear on their lives. Otherwise, it was very likely that they would attract inner demons and get themselves killed. However, Zhou Xian actually dared to swear on his life, and he even swore on his life. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian spoke mysteriously. Actually, my master, the Pale World Sword Master, isn't dead. He's always been here. The veiled woman's body trembled and she sat down. P.S. Sprite $2. 50-foot reader, you haven't appeared for a few days. Has your erectile dysfunction been cured? Many readers and I are very worried about you. Even if you can't get it up, don't take it too hard. Even if you can't get it up, there are still many beautiful things in life. The readers and I will be with you. End of this chapter. Chapter 251. At this moment, the veiled woman's heart was surging like waves. The Firmament Sword Master. The Firmament Sword Sect's ancestral master. The most famous swordsman in the firmament world. He was not just a simple sword master, but the sword master of the entire firmament world. How strong had he been at his peak? The people of Azure Province might not know, but everyone in the Divine Central Continent knew. At his peak, the Firmament Sword Sect had suppressed the Realm Defense Alliance. At that time, the Firmament Sword Sect had been so powerful. The reason it had been so powerful was all because of one person, the Firmament Sword Master. At this moment, he was drinking tea with a calm expression. The veiled woman sat there silently, her expression constantly changing. It was very interesting. After a long time, she calmed down and looked at Zhou Xian. You said that all of this was a trap set up by the Realm Defense Alliance for the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect. What? Zhou Xian smiled. Think about it yourself. Think about it himself. The veiled woman glanced at Zhou Xian and fell into deep thought. 15 minutes later, the veiled woman said, the firmament world has changed and the Realm Defense Alliance has already sacrificed Azure Province and Kanglan Province. I'm afraid that is far from enough. They are also preparing to sacrifice some other forces in the Divine Central Continent. She looked at Zhou Xian. The corners of Zhou Xian's mouth curled up into a smile. Kuraki Academy, Dark World, Sidu family. Think about what happened to them. The veiled woman's pupils constricted when she heard this. Because of these forces, the Dark World had disappeared, Kuraki Academy's strength had been weakened, and the Situ family had lost a true defensive law realm expert and a dozen at the 10,000 law realm. Thinking of this, she looked at Zhou Xian with a trace of disbelief in her eyes. The reason the Realm Defense Alliance put you on the wanted list is not just to destroy Azure Province, but also to weaken the various forces in the Divine Central Continent. As for you, they are just using you to attract hatred. The real masterminds are them. Zhou Xian was stunned and then he gave the veiled woman a thumbs up. That's right. The veiled woman glanced at Zhou Xian. Then what do you plan to do next? Zhou Xian said with a smile. Of course it's to kill all the cultivators from the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect. Leave none alive. The veiled woman said solemnly, these two sects are very strong. I'm afraid they won't be easy to deal with. Zhou Xian shook his head. The Situ family and Kuraki Academy joined hands, 2 true defense law realms, 10,000 law realms and hundreds of experts. However, they all disappeared without a trace. The Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect are powerful, but we are even more powerful. The veiled woman remained silent. Zhou Xian continued. If it's an enemy, it's natural to try to deceive one another and use all kinds of crafty plots and schemes. But if it's a friend, it's natural to open your heart and not conceal anything. You are the leader of the best mercenary group in the Central Plains. I, Zhou Xian, sincerely wish to make friends with you. I hope your excellency can work with me to achieve great things. The veiled woman was silent for a long time. She looked at Zhou Xian. Okay, I'll work with you. Zhou Xian smiled. Then your excellency should be prepared. In 2 days at most we'll make our move. This time there are a total of 21 true defense law realm experts. On the day we make our move, the 21 of us will join hands to kill the Devil Sect's sect master. Of course, the Devil Sect might have some trump cards. For this reason we've left a trump card for him. What did you leave behind? The veiled woman hurriedly asked. Zhou Xian shook his head and smiled. It's a secret for now. I still have things to do. See you later. With that he turned and left. At this moment the veiled woman suddenly asked, is the Firmament World Sword Master really still here? Zhou Xian nodded. Of course. If there's any falsehood in my words, then let me, Gu Jianxian, die without a burial." With that he quickly disappeared into the distance. In the room, the veiled woman was silent for a long time. Then she got up and left. The veiled woman left Blue Waves Academy and quietly left the city. Outside of the city, the veiled woman came to a dense forest. In the forest there stood a middle-aged man. He was the Devil Sect master Ku Mingxiu. The veiled woman walked in front of Ku Mingxiu. "We might have been tricked by the Realm Defense Alliance." As she spoke, she told him about the conversation she had with Zhou Xian in the room. Ku Mingxiu's expression slowly changed from calm to gloomy. In the end, his face was filled with killing intent. However, he quickly regained his composure. After a long time, Ku Mingxiu solemnly said, "What Zhou Xian said might not be true." The veiled woman shook her head. "Whether it's true or false, there's one thing we can be sure of. There's someone behind this person. I've checked. His group of Dao soldiers are all high-grade true rank equipment. Since the establishment of the Blue Waves Dao soldiers, it has only been a few months." As she spoke, she looked at Ku Mingxiu. To turn a group of soldiers into a super Dao soldier in such a short period of time is not something an ordinary force can do. "Father, even if we can't believe what he said, we still have to believe it. If what he said is true, then our devil sect will become the next Dark World, the next Karaki Academy, and the next Situ clan." Ku Mingxiu's face was gloomy. The veiled woman continued, "And that firmament sword master. If he is still alive, no, it's hard for him to die even if he wants to. It's highly possible that he is still alive. Since Zhou Xian has his sword, it's possible that his biggest helper is the firmament sword master. If it's true, once our devil sect becomes enemies with such a powerhouse." Speaking up to this point, she didn't continue. Because the devil sect would definitely not be able to defeat the firmament sword master. 1,000 years ago, the firmament sword master was already invincible in the Blue Waves world. At that time the devil sect was just a small fry. Now that 1,000 years had passed, how powerful had the firmament sword master become? Ku Mingxiu slowly closed his eyes. As he said, "The Realm Protection Alliance not only wants to destroy Blue Waves world and Green Province, but they also want to use Zhou Xian to weaken the forces of the Divine Central Continent. And our devil sect is very likely to be next. However, we can't believe Zhou Xian's words completely." The veiled woman suddenly said, "Whether we can believe it or not, we'll know once we verify it." Ku Mingxiu looked at the veiled woman. "Who?" The veiled woman said solemnly, "The Situ clan." Ku Mingxiu thought for a moment, then said softly, "I'm confused. I didn't think of the Situ clan." As he spoke up to this point, he looked at the veiled woman. "Continue to stay by Zhou Xian's side. Try to cooperate with him as much as possible. I'll go to the Situ clan." The veiled woman nodded. "You must be fast." Ku Mingxiu nodded. "Be careful." After saying that, he disappeared. The veiled woman also turned around and left. The imperial capital of the Jiang Kingdom. At this moment, everyone in the imperial capital of the Jiang Kingdom was in a state of panic. Because tens of thousands of formidable cultivators from the Central Divine Prefecture were outside the city. There were even legendary experts at the True Defense realm amongst them. When the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect announced that they were only targeting Zhou Xian, countless people within the city heaved a sigh of relief, and then they left the city and expressed that they had nothing to do with Zhou Xian. Especially some clans within the city, they'd even moved their entire clans out of the city. Zhou Xian stood silently on the city walls while Bai Zai Mo Yunqi, Ji Anji Jian Chuchu and the others were standing behind him. Below them, countless people were madly running out of the city. After these people ran out, the experts of the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect didn't attack them. Countless people were instantly extremely excited when they saw this scene, so more and more people left the city. As he watched them leave the city without end, Mo Yunqi, who stood by Zhou Xian's side, suddenly said, "Bandit Yi, aren't we going to stop them?" Zhou Xian fell silent for a moment, and then his figure shook and descended outside the city gates. In an instant, all the people who were about to leave the city stopped. All of them were looking at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian thought for a moment and said, "Everyone, we can't believe the words of these cultivators from the Central Divine Prefecture. Everyone. Why can't we believe them?" Meanwhile, a man in the crowd spoke abruptly, "The Devil Sect and Ghost Sect are only targeting you, Zhou Xian. They're not targeting us." As he spoke, he pointed at the crowd in the distance. Look, the devil sect and ghost sect didn't make things difficult for them after they left. Exactly. Dean Yi, the cultivators of the devil sect and ghost sect didn't come for us. They're only targeting you. Dean Yi, this enmity is between you, the devil sect, and the devil sect. We don't want to interfere in it. Please give us a way out. Yi Xian. How can you be so selfish? It's because of you that the devil sect and ghost sect came to Pine Prefecture and caused the citizens of the prefecture to live in misery. Yet now you intend to stop us from leaving the city. Do you want us to die with you? Looks to me like he wants us to die with him. All of them spoke one after another, and some even had furious expressions on their faces. If they weren't aware that they couldn't defeat Xianxia, they would have probably attacked him by now. Yi Xian's face was emotionless and he didn't speak. Meanwhile, Mo Yunqi suddenly appeared by Yi Xian's side, and he glanced angrily at the crowd. Fuck off. All of you fucking fuck off right now. All of them glared fiercely at Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi and then they left swiftly. Meanwhile, Mo Yunqi suddenly charged forward and grabbed a man. Mo Shui, are you fucking leaving as well? Mo Shui, a student of Blue Waves Academy. Mo Shui was slightly fearful and he lowered his head slightly. My clan wants me to leave. Mo Yunqi was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, let him go. Mo Yunqi gritted his teeth in anger and he suddenly kicked Mo Shui. We've raced you for nothing. Hurry up and fuck off. Mo Shui bowed slightly to Yi Xian, and he wanted to say something, but he didn't say anything in the end and he left swiftly. Meanwhile, Jiang Jie walked out and she came before Yi Xian and she said softly, another dozen students in the academy have voluntarily withdrawn. Yi Xian said softly, it's fine. Let them leave. Those who are willing to go through thick and thin with me, Yi Xian, will be able to share prosperity with me in the future. Chapter 252. Go through thick and thin together. In Yi Xian's opinion, if they couldn't go through thick and thin together, then what qualifications did they have to share wealth? Therefore he didn't feel sad when he saw these people leave, because those who stayed were Yi Xian's true friends. More and more people left the city. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi's face was ashen. These people came to the city when they found out there was a spirit vein. Now that the city is in trouble, they immediately left. They're inhumane. Jian Chuchu chuckled. It's normal. It's easy to share wealth but difficult to go through thick and thin together. However, this isn't a bad thing for Blue Waves Academy. At least those who stayed are true friends. Bai Zhe nodded. It's good that they left. Mo Yunqi smiled bitterly. I know that, but didn't you see? Just now those people were blaming Bandit Yi. Damn it, are they stupid? If it wasn't for Bandit Yi, this city would have been slaughtered. Yi Xian patted Mo Yunqi's shoulder. For me, it doesn't matter if everyone in the world leaves. As long as you're still here, it's enough. With that he turned and left. Mo Yunqi glanced at Yi Xian's departing figure and said softly, actually, I'm a little panicked too. But, since we're brothers, we should face everything together. Even if there's a cliff ahead, I'll jump with you. At this moment, Bai Zhe punched at Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi's expression changed and he turned and punched back. Bang. Mo Yunqi was knocked back by over 30 meters. After stopping, Mo Yunqi glared at Bai Zhe. Are you crazy? Bai Zhe glanced at Mo Yunqi. I'm happy that you said something sensible, so I want to punch you. Mo Yunqi. Jian Chuchu covered her mouth and giggled. More and more people left the city. Even some students from Blue Waves Academy left. Blue Waves Academy didn't stop these students. More and more cultivators of the Central Divine Prefecture were rushing over from outside the city. However, the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect didn't give the order to attack. Moreover, all those who attacked without permission were severely punished. As a result, the capital of the Jiang country was surprisingly calm. The Central Divine Prefecture, the Upper Domain, the Situ family. On this day, the Devil Sect Master Ku Mingxiu suddenly paid a visit. In the sky above the Situ clan, Situ Ming looked at Ku Mingxiu with a strange expression. Ku Mingxiu cupped his fists towards Situ Ming. Brother Situ, I have come here today for one thing. Please tell me the truth. Ku Mingxiu will be eternally grateful. Situ Ming glanced at Ku Mingxiu. Speak. Ku Mingxiu said in a deep voice. Of course, what exactly happened to the people of the Situ clan in the Wanqiu mountain? Situ Ming narrowed his eyes upon hearing this. His expression was slightly unfriendly. Ku Mingxu quickly said, "Brother Situ, I mean no harm. I just want to know what happened in Wuxia Mountain." After a moment of silence, Situ Ming said, "Two true defense realm experts disappeared mysteriously in Wuxia Mountain. There were also 10,000 law realm experts and hundreds of experts. Who do you think is capable of making these people disappear without a trace and not letting any news leak out?" The Realm Defense Alliance. The first person that came to Ku Mingxu's mind was the Realm Defense Alliance. Situ Ming said again, "That day Supreme Lord Lu was also in Wuxia Mountain. You can go and investigate this matter." Ku Mingxu narrowed his eyes and his expression was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, Situ Ming said again, "Your devil sect invaded Azure Province. I think the Realm Defense Alliance promised something. However, this old man will say one more thing. Your devil sect should know what kind of face the Realm Protection Alliance has. Don't lose the entire devil sect instead of Qingzhou." After saying that, he turned around and left. Ku Mingxu remained silent for a long time. In the end, he turned around and left. Along the way, Ku Mingxu's expression was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, Ku Mingxu suddenly stopped and changed his direction. He arrived at Blue Waves Academy. Ku Mingxu met the dean of Blue Waves Academy, Li Qing. As the two of them chatted, Li Qing suddenly said angrily, "The Realm Defense Alliance is despicable and shameless. They are the #1 trash in our Azure Firmament world." After saying that, he flicked his sleeves and left angrily. Ku Mingxu watched Li Qing leave with a calm expression. After a while, he turned around and left. At this moment, he had already made up his mind. Blue Waves Academy. Currently, more than 20 students of Blue Waves Academy had left. There were less than 26 students left. However, it was worth mentioning that none of the Dao soldiers of Blue Waves Academy had left. The entire imperial capital of Jiang country was extremely deserted. This was because more than half of the people in the city had left. Even some soldiers of Jiang country had left the city. After these people left the city, they didn't leave immediately. All of them set up small tents outside the city. It was obvious that they were waiting for the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect to get rid of Zhou Xian before returning to the city, Blue Waves Academy. In an underground cultivation room, Zhou Xian saw Ji Banzwang and the others. In fact, Ji Banzwang and the others had already arrived at Blue Waves Academy. However, Zhou Xian didn't allow them to be exposed. This was a form of protection. Because Ji Banzwang and the others had their own clans. If they were exposed now, they might be targeted by the Realm Defense Alliance. In the cultivation room, Zhou Xian waved his hand. 7 storage rings landed in front of Ling Han and the others. Ling Han and the others looked at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian smiled and said, "These are all true-grade high-level equipment. It's just right for you." Ling Han and the others exchanged a look. Then they chuckled and didn't refuse. They all put away the storage rings. Since Zhou Xian gave it to them, they naturally wouldn't refuse. Seeing that Ling Han and the others didn't refuse, Zhou Xian also smiled. If everyone was polite, then they would really be estranged from each other. For example, he didn't refuse them when they came to help him from the Divine Central Continent. And now, after Ling Han and the others were equipped with top-grade equipment, these 7 people could be said to have the strength to kill 10,000 Dharma tier elites. And if they reach 10,000 Dharma tier, they would definitely have the strength to kill law-defending tier elites. Ji Banzwang and Ling Han had already reached 10,000 Dharma tier. They could easily kill law-defending tier elites. At this time, Ji Banzwang suddenly said, "When do you plan to fight?" Hearing this, Ling Han and the others all looked at Zhou Xian. They had already prepared all the equipment. Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Don't worry. If we fight, I won't leave you out." Ji Banzwang nodded and said, "I'm going to sleep first. Call me if there's a fight." With that, she turned and left. Zhou Xian didn't leave immediately. He felt the familiar faces in front of him. At this moment, he felt very complicated. Brother. In the Yi clan of Azure City, although Zhou Xian was related by blood to the members of the Yi clan, he didn't have feelings for them. Clans were like the royal family. There was no kinship at all. After leaving Azure City, he met Mo Yunqi, Bai Zai, Ji Anji, Jiang Jiu, Ji Banzwang, Ling Han, Yi Li. After getting to know these people, Zhou Xian's world wasn't just limited to his sister, but also brothers and confidants. In one's life, if one didn't have a few life and death brothers, Even if one reached the peak of sword arts, he would still be lonely. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and said with a smile, "Tonight, brothers, let's drink to our heart's content. How can we be left out?" At this time Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi suddenly ran in. When the two saw Ling Han and the others, they directly went over and gave them a big hug. Soon everyone's laughter and the sound of wine bowls clinking could be heard in the room. After an unknown amount of time, the slightly drunk Ling Han suddenly stumbled in front of Yi Xian and said, "Brother Yi, when we left that day, tell me honestly, were you angry?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone present looked towards Yi Xian and Ling Han. At this moment, it was incomparably quiet, as if all the guilt had disappeared. Yi Xian suddenly slammed the bowl on the table and said, "Angry I Yi Xian am King angry. Come, I'll punish you with 3 bowls. If you can't finish it, don't expect me to forgive you." Hearing this, everyone was slightly stunned. Soon, everyone hurriedly raised their bowls and drank wildly. After Ling Han drank 3 bowls, he hugged Yi Xian tightly, then lay on the chair and murmured, "Brother Yi, this time we definitely won't leave. We'll live and die together. Live and die together." After a long time, only the sound of breathing could be heard. Meanwhile, Yi Xian stood up, walked out of the cultivation room and went outside. At this time he naturally didn't dare to get drunk. If the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect suddenly launched an attack outside the city, then everyone would be finished. At night, there were no stars or moon in the sky and it was completely silent. Yi Xian sat on the stone steps, holding a wooden figurine in his hand. It was Yiling. In this life, the person he cared about the most was naturally his younger sister, Yiling. Even though he knew that Yiling was very powerful now and might even be stronger than him in the future, in his heart she was still just a child. At this moment, a man in black suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian put away the wooden figurine and the man in black said in a hoarse voice, "Follow me." After saying this, he turned around and left. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian followed him. Under the lead of the man in black, the two of them arrived at a dense forest behind the mountain of Blue Waves Academy. The forest was pitch black. The man in black stopped, turned around and took off his black clothes. Ku Mingxiu. The man was the sect leader of the Devil Sect, Ku Mingxiu. Ku Mingxiu stared at Yi Xian. "Aren't you surprised?" Yi Xian asked, "Sect leader Ku, why are you looking for me in the middle of the night?" Ku Mingxiu walked to the front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. "If I attack now, I am 90% sure that I can kill you." Yi Xian grinned. That day the Dark Lord and the person from Situ clan also said the same thing. Now the grass on their graves is growing. Ku Mingxiu stared at Yi Xian and after a moment he said, "My Devil Sect withdraws." Yi Xian remained silent. Ku Mingxiu squinted his eyes and killing intent could be seen in his eyes. "No." Yi Xian shook his head. "I am fine with it, but there are some people who might not agree to it." Ku Mingxiu said coldly, "Realm Protection Alliance?" Yi Xian nodded his head. Ku Mingxiu slowly clenched his fists and at this moment Yi Xian suddenly said, "I have a plan." Ku Mingxiu said, "Speak." Yi Xian smiled, "You and I will put on a show for the world and the Realm Protection Alliance, but I want a reward of 1 billion supreme spiritual stones." Ku Mingxiu frowned, "You are too greedy." Yi Xian shrugged, "Then there is nothing to talk about. Sect leader Ku, let's fight tomorrow. You are responsible for your own life and death." After saying that, he turned around and left. He left decisively. After Yi Xian took a few steps, Ku Mingxiu suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. "How do we put on a show?" Yi Xian stretched out his right hand. "Pay up first." Ku Mingxiu. Chapter 253. In the dark, Yi Xian raised his hand with an expressionless face. Even though the person in front of him was a true defense realm expert, there was no sign of fear on his face. Confidence. He was very confident. That was how Ku Mingxiu felt, as if he, Yi Xian, was the true defense realm expert. Fear. To Yi Xian, after witnessing how terrifying the mysterious lady was, he was no longer afraid of ordinary experts. That being said, he would not underestimate any true defense realm expert either. Besides, it was one thing if he could not defeat them, but he would never back down. To him, it did not matter if he could not defeat them, but he would never back down or be afraid. In the dark, the two were in a stalemate for half an hour. In the end, Yi Xian said with a smile, Sect leader Ku, forgive me for speaking out of turn, but I know you're worried. You think that I, Yi Xian, am just being glib and trying to trick you, or that you don't fully believe what I said, am I right? Ku Mingxu looked at Yi Xian and said, yes. The calmer you are, the more suspicious I feel. Very frank. Although he knew that something was amiss and that there must be someone behind Yi Xian, he still felt that Yi Xian was not reliable. Yi Xian said with a smile, although you don't think that I can fully believe what I said, you can't not believe me. The situation in Azure Prefecture is very complicated. After you came to Azure Prefecture, you realized that things are not as simple as you thought. Therefore, you don't want to be involved in this mess anymore. Unfortunately, it's too late to back out now. Ku Mingxu said coldly, if the demon sect backs out now, will the Realm Defense Alliance still dare to attack us? Yi Xian shrugged. Sect Master Ku, you can give it a try. However, with all due respect, there's no turning back once a fight breaks out. Also, since Sect Leader Ku doesn't want to lose money, I'll take my leave. He then turned around and left. At that moment, Ku Mingxu pointed his finger and a storage ring landed in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. There were 500 million gold coins in the storage ring. Behind him, Ku Mingxu said, I'll give you half first. I'll give you the rest after my devil sect leaves the Azure province. Yi Xian put away the storage ring. Deal. At this point he turned to face Ku Mingxu. Although the devil sect can leave, the ghost sect and the tens of thousands of cultivators from the divine central continent can't leave either. Ku Mingxu furrowed his brows. Why? Yi Xian sneered. If we don't keep these people here, do you think that the Realm Defense Alliance will let this matter rest? Do you know how much wealth we can get by destroying a force and tens of thousands of cultivators? Forgive me for being blunt, but if it wasn't for the fact that your devil sect is too powerful, I wouldn't have come here to trade with you. Ku Mingxu fell silent for a short while before he said, you can do whatever you want with the lives of those cultivators. As for the ghost sect, the ghost sect isn't simple as well, so you'll definitely have to pay a certain price if you want to destroy them. Yi Xian smiled and said, that's my business. Ku Mingxu glanced at Yi Xian and said, I'll wait for your notice. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. After Ku Mingxu left, Yi Xian turned around and left. Right when he was about to leave the forest, a woman suddenly appeared in front of him. It was the sect master of the ghost sect, Jianu. Jianu walked over to Yi Xian while a cold glow flickered in her beautiful eyes. I'm very curious, truly curious. Two people who are about to fight to the death actually met in secret in the middle of the night. Yi Xian smiled and said, Sect Master Ji, is there anything I can help you with? Jianu stared fixedly at Yi Xian and said, between the two of you. Yi Xian shook his head. There's no need for you to ask. I'll tell you everything. The devil sect is preparing to leave Pine Prefecture, and the tens of thousands of cultivators from the divine central continent and the ghost sect will all die here. Jianu ridiculed, do you have the ability to do that? Yi Xian moved closer to Jianu and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. I naturally don't, but the people behind me do. Jianu's eyes narrowed slightly. Are you trying to scare me? Yi Xian shrugged. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. With that he turned and left. Jianu clenched her fists tightly. She wanted to make a move several times, but she didn't dare to because she was afraid that if she did, there would be no turning back. Not long after he left. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. After a long while, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. The Realm Defense Alliance has promised to give Pine Prefecture to you, but if Pine Prefecture source is taken away, what use is it even if we give it to you? At noon tomorrow, I will eliminate the tens of thousands of cultivators from the divine central continent. I hope you can help me then. With that he quickly disappeared into the distance. Behind him Jianu was silent. Not far behind her a middle-aged man walked out. It was the sect master of the devil sect, Ku Mingxu. He noticed you. Jianu suddenly said. Ku Mingxu shook his head. With his strength it's impossible for him to notice me. There's someone behind him and that person noticed me but I didn't notice him. When they spoke up to hear, their expressions became solemn. Jianu said in a low voice, do you believe him? Ku Mingxu shook his head. I don't believe him, but my devil sect doesn't want to get involved in this mess anymore. Coming to Pine Prefecture was a mistake. With that he turned and left. Jianu sighed softly, feeling helpless. Vortex. After arriving here, both of them realized that things were not as simple as the Realm Defense Alliance had said. As long as they killed Yi Xian, Pine Prefecture would be theirs. Putting aside whether Yi Xian was easy to kill, even if they could, they would have to pay a heavy price. Moreover, even if Yi Xian died, it would be meaningless if the force behind Yi Xian was not destroyed. The Realm Defense Alliance was actually using them to target Yi Xian and the force behind Yi Xian. To put it bluntly, they were being used by the Realm Defense Alliance. They didn't believe in Yi Xian, but they didn't believe in the Realm Defense Alliance either. After a while, Jianu also turned and left. The night passed. The next day, a red sun slowly rose from the horizon. At this time, at least 1/3 of the people in the capital of Jiang country had left, and there were still people leaving. At noon, Yi Xian suddenly appeared on the city wall. The moment Yi Xian appeared on the city wall, countless cultivators from the divine central continent on the 200 cloud ships began to roar in unison. Their provocation was self-evident. On the largest cloud ship, Ku Mingxiu and Jianu stood quietly, both looking at Yi Xian below. Behind Yi Xian were 100 Grey Waves Dao soldiers, the Wild Lion Mercenary Group and the King Mercenary Group. Of course, this lineup was much weaker than the tens of thousands of cultivators from the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect. In terms of lineup, it was a crushing defeat. More and more people left the city. When they saw that Yi Xian and the others were about to fight to the death, they did not hide the mockery in their eyes. Yi Xian's move was undoubtedly like throwing an egg against a rock. Not to mention Yi Xian, even the King Mercenary Group and the Wild Lion Mercenary Group were panicking. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. On the city wall, Yi Xian suddenly soared into the sky. He pointed his long sword at the Devil Sect leader, Ku Mingxiu. I heard that the Devil Sect leader is extremely powerful. I would like to have a spar with you. The moment he said that, everyone was dumbfounded. Challenging the Devil Sect leader? The Devil Sect leader was a true defensive magic realm expert. Moreover, he was not an ordinary true defensive magic realm expert. One must know that there was a difference in strength between true defensive magic realm experts. Meanwhile, Yi Xian was only at the Divine Union realm. Yi Xian had already reached the Myriad Dharma realm a long time ago. However, he did not show it and had been hiding it. Therefore, most people still thought that he was at the Divine Union realm. Everyone looked at Yi Xian in shock. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Even the King Mercenary Group was dumbfounded. Obviously, they did not expect Yi Xian to challenge the Devil Sect leader. On the cloud ship, the Devil Sect leader, Ku Mingxiu, stared at Yi Xian. He did not expect Yi Xian to suddenly challenge him in front of everyone. He did not expect it at all. In next to no time, numerous sounds of ridicule resounded. Challenge the Devil Sect leader? Is Yi Xian out of his mind? How dare he challenge the Devil Sect leader? Ignorance is not scary. What's scary is not knowing your own ignorance. Yi Xian can't see through his own strength and has no confidence in his own strength. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. Ignorant, ridiculous, ridiculous. Since he's so reckless, we can let the Devil Sect leader kill him. That will save us a lot of trouble. On the cloud ship, Jiannu suddenly asked, "What the hell is he doing?" Ku Mingxiu shook his head slightly. "I don't know, but we'll find out soon." Under the gaze of countless people, he showed up in front of Yi Xian out of thin air. True Dharma defense state. Even in the divine central continent, he was considered a top-notch expert, let alone in the Azure province. Ku Mingxiu looked at Yi Xian calmly and sent a message through celestial qi. "What are you going to do?" Yi Xian also sent a message through celestial qi. "You and I will fight for 3 moves and then you will lose to me." Upon hearing this, Ku Mingxiu frowned. "Defeated by you? Are you sure?" Yi Xian replied, "I'm very sure." Ku Mingxiu rejected directly. "If I lose to you, where will the old man hide his face? Where will the Devil Sect hide its face?" Yi Xian said calmly, "This is part of my plan. If you choose to lose to me, you can take this opportunity to leave with the Devil Sect." Ku Mingxiu still shook his head. "If I choose to lose to you, then my own reputation won't matter, but the reputation of the Devil Sect that has existed for thousands of years will be destroyed." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "How about this? We'll fight to a draw. In that way, I'll achieve my objective, and the Devil Sect's reputation won't be destroyed." Ku Mingxu seemed to be considering it. Meanwhile Yi Xian added, if you're still unwilling then I'm powerless. Ku Mingxu thought for a moment and said, let's begin. Yi Xian nodded and then he spoke loudly, today we'll decide the outcome with a single strike of the sword. This time he didn't use celestial qi to transmit his voice. Moreover, it was enhanced by celestial qi, so his voice was extremely loud and everyone here could hear him clearly. After that, everyone watched as Yi Xian withdrew his sword, and it didn't take long for a strand of powerful sword aura to surge out from within him. A single strike of the sword to decide life and death. He didn't execute the 30m slash because he was 100% certain that he wouldn't be able to kill Ku Mingxu. Needless to say, Yi Xian's sword aura was extremely powerful, and everyone here could sense it as it swept through the sky. Meanwhile, a strand of dark sword intent suddenly swept out from within Yi Xian's body, and it didn't take long for Yi Xian to vanish. When he appeared again he was above Ku Mingxu. Meanwhile the dark sword intent had suddenly enveloped both of them. No one could see Yi Xian and Ku Mingxu anymore. However, it didn't take long for a resounding sword howl to suddenly resound through the sky. In next to no time the sword intent dispersed, and Yi Xian had returned to his original spot. Yi Xian's right hand was trembling. Ku Mingxu stood there with a calm expression on his face. Yi Xian suddenly spoke via celestial qi. Praise me. The corners of Ku Mingxu's mouth twitched slightly, and he hesitated for a moment before he said, you're an extraordinary genius that's rare in this world. There's no one like you in the past and no one in the future. At this moment Yi Xian cupped his fists. Thank you for letting me win. With the help of Yi Xian's celestial qi, these 3 words resounded through the sky like thunder, and it could even be heard from 10 miles away. Let me win? Ku Mingxu was dumbfounded. What do you mean by let me win? Did you win? Did you win? Are you shameless? Countless people below were petrified. Yi Xian won? P.S. When I first started writing Sword Domain, the results weren't good, and I only earned around $300 a month. I almost couldn't continue writing. Then a reader told me that if I write well I'll give you 11 monthly tickets every month. He might not know that it was my biggest motivation to continue writing. To an author, the support of the readers is their biggest motivation. What I want to say is that some readers said that I'm too arrogant. I'm not arrogant. I don't know if I will be arrogant in the future, but I won't be arrogant now because I'm poor. I'll write well, write more words, work harder and earn more money. Am I a little vulgar? End of this chapter. Chapter 254. He won. Everyone was astounded. Everyone gazed at the sect master of the Devil's Sect. After all, he was a true Imperial Law realm expert. Would an expert of such a realm lose to Yi Xian? Everyone was waiting for the sect master's answer. Ku Mingxu stared fixedly at Yi Xian and spoke via voice transmission. I've never seen such thick skin on your face. Yi Xian spoke solemnly. Senior, don't bother about trifles when you're doing great things. Now you can leave with the members of the Devil Sect. Remember, you can't say that you're leaving Pine Prefecture. Just say that you're leaving and we'll fight another day. Ku Mingxu glanced coldly at Yi Xian, and then he turned around with the intention of leaving. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly spoke. Senior, you have to go all the way if you're putting on an act. The corners of Ku Mingxu's mouth twitched. He forcefully suppressed the rage in his heart, and then he turned around and spoke indifferently. Young friend, you're an extraordinary genius. This old man admires you. It's getting late, so let's fight another day. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure flickered and appeared on the cloud vessel. He glanced at Yi Xian. Let's go. Go. Everyone was dumbstruck. They're leaving just like that. Were they really defeated by Yi Xian? Their minds instantly went blank when they saw the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect retreat. They're really leaving. It didn't take long for the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect to start retreating. On the other hand, the cultivators from the Central Divine Prefecture intended to retreat as well. However, Yi Xian's figure suddenly shot forward and obstructed their path. All the cultivators from the Central Divine Prefecture revealed fearful expressions when they saw Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned. Everyone, I don't think I asked all of you to leave. An old man who stood before Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Yi Xian, don't go too far. There are tens of thousands of us here. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. The old man's head flew into the air while blood sprayed out like a fountain. Everyone was shocked and quickly retreated. In the air, Xian pointed his sword at the tens of thousands of people in front of him. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already rushed out. Below, 100 Songlong Dao soldiers began to run. Arrows shot into the sky, and in an instant, nearly 100 people fell from the sky. In the city, the Wild Lion mercenary group also rushed out. After hesitating for a moment, the veiled woman also rushed out with the 9 people behind her. Other than these 3 mercenary groups, there was also Lu Banzwang and the others. There were less than 200 people on Yixian's side, but their aura completely crushed the cultivators from the divine central continent. Of course, the main reason was that after the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect left, these people had no one to lead them and they were in a state of disunity. As soon as they started fighting, they didn't think about risking their lives. Instead, they thought about escaping with all their might. That was why they collapsed at the first clash. Massacre. Yixian and the rest began their massacre, especially Yixian. Everywhere he passed, corpses would fall from the sky. No one could take a single strike from him. Apart from him, there were a few people who were particularly eye-catching. They were the Wild Lion, the King Lu Banzwang, and the Veiled Woman. They were all freaks among freaks. Even a myriad Dharma realm expert was no match for them. It should be said that they all had the strength to easily kill a myriad Dharma realm expert. Those below the myriad Dharma realm were no match for them at all. Apart from them, the 3 mercenary groups and Yixian's Songlong Dao soldiers were also extremely eye-catching. In particular, the 9 people following the Veiled Woman were all at the myriad Dharma realm. Although they weren't truly at the myriad Dharma realm, none of them were weak and their combat strength was extremely powerful. Just like that, the number of cultivators from the divine central continent decreased. Of course, most of them had fled. The battle lasted for 2 hours before it ended. Outside the capital of the kingdom of Jiang, nearly 10,000 corpses lay on the ground. Yixian sat in front of the city gates. He leaned against the city walls and panted heavily. He didn't know how many people he had killed, but it was a lot. This was the way of the world. On many occasions it was either you who killed others or others who killed you. In the world of cultivators there was no right or wrong, only the strong and the weak. Meanwhile, Mo Yunqi walked over and sat down by Yixian's side. He withdrew a medicinal pill and consumed it, and then he said, "That was satisfying." Yixian smiled and didn't speak. The Veiled Woman, the King and the Wild Lion walked over as well. The King shook his head and said, "Without the leadership of the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect, they were just a bunch of rabble." When he spoke up to hear, he gazed at Yixian and said, "I'm very curious. How did you convince the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect to retreat?" Yixian smiled and said, "What do you think?" The King spoke indifferently, "Forget it. I shouldn't have asked." As soon as he finished speaking, he sat down at the side. Yixian suddenly said, "What were our losses?" Mo Yunqi spoke in a low voice, 11 of our Songlong Dao soldiers died. 11. Yixian fell silent for a moment and then he said, "Their families must be properly compensated. If they have direct relatives and are young, they can be brought to the academy to study." Mo Yunqi nodded. "Advisor Lu will take care of it." Yixian gazed at Lu Banzwang and the latter shook his head. "Our brothers are all here. They were all here." Yixian's expression eased up slightly. Only 15 of their forces had perished this time. Amongst them, 11 of the Songlong Dao soldiers had perished while the Wild Lion mercs had perished. As for the King mercs and the Nether Spring mercs, not a single one of them had perished. Of course, many of them were injured. Even though they'd sacrificed 15 of their forces, almost 10,000 of them had survived. Actually, if a few tens of thousands of cultivators from the Central Divine Prefecture fought to the death, then they would definitely be unable to defeat them. Because these cultivators from the Central Divine Prefecture weren't weaklings. Unfortunately, after they saw the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect leave, and especially after they saw the sect master of the Devil Sect being defeated by Yixian, they could be said to have lost all will to fight. At a time like this, they were like a flock of sheep. No matter how many sheep there were, it was impossible for them to launch an attack against a single wolf. Of course, there were some who fought desperately, but it was pointless. Because they weren't strong enough. Meanwhile, Yixian suddenly stood up and he gazed at Mo Yunqi. "How are the spoils?" Mo Yunqi chuckled. We obtained a total of 1.2 billion top-grade spirit stones. As he spoke, he flicked his finger and a spatial ring flew into Yi Xian's palm. 1.2 billion. All of them were overjoyed when they heard this. Because 1.2 billion wasn't a small amount. Yi Xian withdrew 3 empty spatial rings and distributed the top-grade spirit stones he obtained. After that, he flicked his finger, and the 3 spatial rings flew over to the Veiled Woman, King and Mad Lion respectively. Mad Lion and the other 2 looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, "There are 300 million top-tier spirit stones in each storage ring. As for the rest of the miscellaneous items, I will distribute them to you after I auction them off." 300 million. Mad Lion and King exchanged glances and there was a smile in their eyes. Because it wasn't a small amount. They cupped their fists to Yi Xian and then they put the spatial rings away. The Veiled Woman glanced at Yi Xian before she put the spatial rings away as well. Yi Xian turned around and gazed towards the distance. Those fellows have fled in all directions and they're no longer a threat. Everyone, we should seize the opportunity to pursue them. From now onward, all of you can fight freely. How much you earn depends on how many you kill. King and Mad Lion exchanged glances, and in the next moment, the 2 of them led their respective brothers and chased after them. Yi Xian turned to Lu Banzwang and Lu Banzwang nodded slightly. "I'll take good care of them." After saying this, she led Ling Han and the others in charging in another direction. Yi Xian turned to Mo Yunqi, Bai Zai and Jianji. "The 3 of you take 30 blue billow Dao soldiers each. Remember, don't be greedy and keep in touch." Mo Yunqi chuckled. "Don't worry, we'll be fine." Soon, Mo Yunqi and the others disappeared into the distance with the blue billow Dao soldiers. Training. Yi Xian knew very well that if Mo Yunqi and the other 2 and the gray billow Dao soldiers wanted to become stronger, they had to experience battles. Because he discovered that both the blue billow Dao soldiers and Mo Yunqi were slightly weaker than the mercenaries of the 3 mercenary teams. Especially the 9 people behind the Veiled Woman. Not only were their cultivation levels higher than Mo Yunqi and the others, but they were also much stronger in terms of combat. These people had definitely been tempered through countless battles. If the blue billow Dao soldiers wanted to become stronger, not only did they need good resources and equipment, they also needed the baptism of blood. At the side, the Veiled Woman suddenly said, "You didn't defeat the demon sect master just now." Yi Xian collected his thoughts and said indifferently, "Is that important?" The Veiled Woman looked straight at Yi Xian. "You'll only kill yourself by being so high profile. You're wrong." Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. "Even if I keep a low profile now, there will still be people who want to mess with me. Since being low profile is useless, why not be high profile? From today onwards, the entire Azure world will know that I, Yi Xian, defeated a true Imperial Magic Elite at the Divine Combination tier. In the future, who won't fear me, Yi Xian?" The Veiled Woman's face twitched. "You didn't defeat the demon sect master. Aren't you embarrassed to say that?" Yi Xian shrugged. "What's there to be embarrassed about? Anyway, I don't think there's a problem." "There's no problem at all." The Veiled Woman was about to speak when the sky was suddenly torn apart. The Veiled Woman and Yi Xian suddenly turned their heads. There, a white figure flashed out from the crack in space. The white figure was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of Yi Xian and the Veiled Woman. It was a small demonic beast. This small demonic beast looked like a cat, but it was very different from a cat. Its entire body was a deep blue, and its tail was very large and furry, with a hint of fiery red. Its face was round and its eyes were big and round. Its eyeballs were crystal blue and one of its teeth was exposed. From its shape it looked very cute. What was worth mentioning was that there was a hint of red at the corner of its mouth. Seemed to be injured. The small demonic beast stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was confused. Just as he was about to speak, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in the sky. Supreme Lu. This person was the Supreme Lu of the Realm Defense Alliance. Supreme Lu's eyes locked onto the small demonic beast. Just as he was about to make a move, he suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "It's you." Yi Xian's expression was solemn. He didn't know Supreme Lu before, but after being targeted by the Realm Defense Alliance, he had investigated the Realm Defense Alliance. Thus he knew who this person was. Why did he come personally? Did he have to do it himself? Yi Xian clenched his right hand, ready to activate the World Prison Pagoda at any time. Supreme Lu didn't make a move. Instead he pointed at the small demonic beast. Hand it over. Hand it over. Yi Xian looked at the small demonic beast. He didn't know it at all. Just as he was about to speak, the small demonic beast suddenly turned into a blue light and entered his body. This time Yi Xian was stunned. The god from the second floor. This was the Mother King god from the second floor. Seeing the small demonic beast enter Yi Xian's body, Supreme Lu's expression instantly turned cold. Yi Xian, this demonic beast killed 11 of my Realm Defense Alliances, Realm Defense Alliances, Realm Defense Alliances, Realm Defense Alliances, 2 true Realm Defense Alliances, Realm Defense Alliances, Supreme Treasure. If you don't hand it over, I will grind your bones to dust. Yi Xian was about to speak. At this time from the World Prison Pagoda, a piece of white paper floated out. On the white paper there was a portrait of Supreme Lu, and above Supreme Lu's head there was a fist. Yi Xian's fist. Obviously this was asking him to hit Supreme Lu. Yi Xian smiled bitterly in his heart. God. I can't have King beat him. After a moment of silence the second floor began to shake violently. Yi Xian suddenly felt dizzy. Yi Xian was shocked and hurriedly said, "Don't mess around, I'll hit him all right." The World Prison Pagoda instantly quieted down. Yi Xian gulped, then looked at Supreme Lu in the sky. Supreme Lu, that let's spar? The Veiled Woman, Supreme Lu. Chapter 255. Spar. Lord Lu thought he had misheard and asked, "You want to spar with me?" Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, "Yes." Hearing Yi Xian's words, Lord Lu's expression turned cold. "Yi Xian, I knew you were arrogant but I didn't know you were this arrogant." Beside Yi Xian the Veiled Woman shook her head. Lord Lu. He was one of the most powerful cultivators in the firmament world. Yi Xian was challenging Lord Lu. To the Veiled Woman, Qin Xiaobei was overestimating himself. Yi Xian was helpless too. This god on the second floor was unreasonable. He asked him to fight Lord Lu but he refused. Then Lord Lu started to mess around in the pagoda. The problem was he really couldn't beat him. Yi Xian lifted his head to face Lord Lu. "Lord Lu, I know that I'm no match for you. However, that beast was raised by my master. If you want to capture it, Yi Xian, will not agree to it even if I have to die." "Master." Lord Lu squinted his eyes. "Who is your master?" Yi Xian shook his head. "No comment." Lord Lu stared at Yi Xian. "Do you really think I won't dare to touch you?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "With Lord Lu's strength, it would be a piece of cake for you to kill me. However, what happens after you kill me?" Lord Lu suddenly took a step forward. "Kneel." At that moment Yi Xian felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. His knees bent and he almost knelt down but he forced himself to stand. However, at this moment all the bones in his body were making cracking sounds as if they were about to break. Yi Xian clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. His body trembled violently and his forehead was drenched in sweat. "Kneel?" Yi Xian's expression was ferocious. In his entire life, other than kneeling for his sister, Yi Xian had never kneeled to anyone. "Never." Yi Xian roared, "Kneel to your ancestors." Boom. A gust of evil sword will suddenly swept out from his body, and the sword will shot up into the sky heading straight for Lord Lu. In the air, Lord Lu raised his hand and pressed down with a cold expression. Boom. The sword intent instantly shattered. Down below Yi Xian was sent flying backward like a kite with a broken string. This time he was sent flying for thousands of feet. In the end he landed heavily on the ground, creating a huge pit that was several feet deep. In the air Lu's supremacy stared coldly at Yi Xian. "No matter how monstrous you are, you're nothing more than an ant in my eyes." As soon as he finished speaking he was about to launch another attack. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly dashed out of the deep pit with his sword and slashed at Lord Lu. The Veiled Woman's eyes were filled with disbelief. Because she'd never imagined that Yi Xian would really dare to attack exalted Lord Lu. Seeing that Yi Xian was coming at him with his sword, a mocking smile appeared on high Lord Lu's lips, and he flicked his sleeve. Bang. Yi Xian was instantly blasted flying again, and then his figure smashed against the nearby city wall. The city wall collapsed. Blood sprayed from Yi Xian's mouth as he stood amidst the rubble. At this moment he deeply realized how weak he was. Weak. Extremely weak. Even though he could be considered to be at the top amongst the younger generation, he was still too weak when facing the experts of the senior generation of the Central Divine Prefecture. At this moment he'd come to an understanding. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and plots were useless. Lu Supremacy looked down at Zhou Xian. I don't know how you persuaded the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect to retreat, but it doesn't matter. From this moment onward, my Realm Defense Alliance will play with you. As he spoke, he glanced coldly at the surroundings. From this moment onward, so long as Zhou Xian is in Pine Prefecture, then there won't be peace in Pine Prefecture. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. In the end, he didn't dare to kill Xianxia, because he was still afraid of that mysterious woman. However, he was gradually losing his patience, because he hadn't expected that the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect would actually be persuaded to retreat by Zhou Xian. Those two sects didn't even want Pine Prefecture. He didn't want to continue delaying like this because he'd noticed that Zhou Xian had already attained the Dharma realm. Zhou Xian could trick others, but it was impossible for him to trick Lu Supremacy. Zhou Xian's growth was too swift. If he was allowed to continue like this, then not to mention that mysterious woman, even Zhou Xian himself would be able to pose a huge threat to the Realm Defense Alliance. Just like the Firmament Sword Master from all those years ago. It was exactly because the Realm Defense Alliance had underestimated him that the Firmament Sword Master had risen to prominence and suppressed the Realm Defense Alliance for almost 100 years. Along with Lu Supremacy's departure, his words quickly spread throughout Pine Prefecture. Zhou Xian. So long as Zhou Xian was in Pine Prefecture, then there wouldn't be peace in Pine Prefecture. Zhou Xian had practically instantly become the public enemy of the entire prefecture. Soon, many sects, aristocratic families as well as individual cultivators had arrived at the imperial capital of Jiang country. The number of people was increasing, and they only had one goal, which was to make Zhou Xian leave Pine Prefecture. More and more people arrived, even many people from Jiang country rushed to the imperial capital. At the foot of the mountain of Blue Waves Academy, it was already filled with people. Myriad Mound Mountain. Devil Sect and Ghost Sect had already retreated to Myriad Mound Mountain. On the cloud ship, Ku Mingxiu and Ji Yanyu stood quietly. In front of the two of them was Lu Supremacy. Lu Supremacy looked at the two of them. I'm very curious, what did Zhou Xian say to actually make the two of you return? Ku Mingxiu smiled. Lu Supremacy, that Zhou Xian isn't simple. My Devil Sect doesn't want to provoke him anymore. Lu Supremacy looked at Ku Mingxiu and after a moment of silence he said, the two of you, Zhou Xian's background is indeed not simple. How about this? My Realm Defense Alliance will deal with the people behind him, including Zhou Xian. During this period of time, both of your sects can do whatever you want in Pine Prefecture. Ku Mingxiu and Ji Yanyu looked at each other and finally Ku Mingxiu looked at Lu Supremacy. Why? Lu Supremacy said indifferently, Sect Leader Ku, don't ask too much. Both of you just need to understand that my Realm Defense Alliance will deal with Zhou Xian and the forces behind him personally. Both of you don't have to go against Zhou Xian head-on. Anyway, Pine Prefecture is very big, isn't it? The two of them were a little moved. Lu Supremacy continued, for both of your sects, you have already missed out on Kanglan Prefecture. If you miss out on Pine Prefecture. I agree. Ji Yanyu suddenly said. Lu Supremacy looked at Ku Mingxiu and the latter nodded after a moment of silence. All right. However, my Devil Sect will not go against Zhou Xian. Lu Supremacy said indifferently, that's up to you. After saying that he turned around and disappeared. Soon, Devil Sect and Ghost Sect returned to Pine Prefecture. On the cloud ship, Ji Yanyu suddenly said, Brother Ku, do you know who is behind Zhou Xian? Ku Mingxiu said softly, I know about Daoist. Is he very strong? Ji Yanyu asked. Ku Mingxiu smiled bitterly. If what he said is true, then he is not just strong, he is very strong. In short, when we return to Qingzhou this time, remember one thing. Don't touch anyone related to Zhou Xian. After all, Qingzhou is huge and has a lot of resources. There's no need to provoke him. Inside Kanglan Academy, Zhou Xian was lying on the bed and beside him was Tuoba Yen. At this moment, Tuoba Yen was feeding him a bowl of bird's nest porridge. Zhou Xian grabbed Tuoba Yan's hand, and Tuoba Yan's hand trembled slightly, but he did not retract it. Zhou Xian smiled. You have never fed a man before, right? Tuoba Yan said indifferently, you are the second. The second? Zhou Xian was slightly stunned and he felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. At this moment Tuoba Yen said again, "The first is my younger brother. Yi Xian, healing." Yi Xian began to heal his injuries. After consuming a purple source pill, his injuries recovered very quickly, and in less than half an hour he was almost healed. After healing his injuries, Yi Xian entered the prison pagoda. Yi Xian looked up at the entrance of the second floor, and at this moment, a voice sounded in his mind, "Condense the sword of Dao Law." The voice was very soft, but it was also very cold. "Sword of Dao Law?" Yi Xian frowned. "What sort of Dao Law?" At this moment, between Yi Xian's eyebrows, a earth character quietly appeared. Dao Law. With the return of the god on the second floor, the Dao Law had also returned. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "You mean you want me to condense this Dao Law into a sword?" The voice sounded again, "I don't know." "What the f***ck?" Yi Xian's face darkened. Did he offend this guy? What kind of temper was this? Fortunately, this guy actually began to speak and stopped using paper. Yi Xian was about to speak when the voice sounded again. "Gather the power of the earth and use the Dao Law as a medium to condense the sword of Dao Law." That's what that woman said before she left. Mysterious woman. Yi Xian was delighted and hurriedly asked, "You're saying that sword Immortal sister asked me to condense the sword of Dao Law, right?" "I don't know." Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not ask the god on the second floor again. This god was too arrogant. At this moment he was a little excited. Dao Law. He had not fully comprehended this thing, but he had already come into contact with this Dao Law and seen how powerful it was. If he could condense this earth law into a sword, it should be very powerful. At this moment the voice of the god on the second floor sounded again, "Go find the second Dao Law. If you don't, I'll beat you to death." Yi Xian's face darkened. He was about to speak when a message suddenly appeared in his mind. Gradually Yi Xian was stunned. He had originally thought that the god on the second floor had gone out to have fun. Now it seemed that the god had not gone out to have fun at all. He had gone to find the Dao Law for him. He already knew the whereabouts of the second Dao Law. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly left the prison pagoda. Inside the pagoda the second floor suddenly rumbled. Outside the pagoda Yi Xian hurriedly said, "God, I have something to do. I'll be back soon. Alright, don't mess around. I'll come back first." After saying that, he returned to the prison pagoda. Just like that, he left the prison pagoda after about an hour. Yi Xian went outside. At this moment Lu Jioga and the others were all there. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Let's go and take a look." After saying that, he led Lu Jioga and the others to the top of the mountain. Looking down from here they could see a dense crowd of people. As soon as they saw Yi Xian, all of them started to shout crazily. "Yi Xian, get out of Jiang country. Yi Xian, get out of Qingzhou. Blue Waves Academy, get out of Qingzhou. Scourge of Qingzhou, get out." The voices of the crowd were like a boiling cauldron soaring into the sky. Not only at the foot of the mountain of Blue Waves Academy, but also outside the imperial city, there were countless people gathered. These people only had one goal, and that was to ask Yi Xian to leave Qingzhou. On the mountain, Mo Yunqi suddenly shouted angrily, "Shut up, you bunch of bastards. If not for Bandit Yi guarding this place, the city would have been slaughtered long ago. Can you King have some brains? If not for Yi Xian, why would the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect come? Why would the Realm Defense Alliance target Qingzhou? It's all Yi Xian's fault. All of this was caused by Yi Xian. Yi Xian is the main culprit. If not for him, those cultivators of the divine central continent would not have come to Qingzhou. We don't need his protection, we just need him to get out of here." On the mountain, Mo Yunqi was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "When you need me, I am State Scholar Yi Din Yi. When you don't need me, I am the Scourge of Qingzhou." "Fine, as they wish, let's go. Pass down the order. All members of Blue Waves Academy are to leave." Chapter 256. Leave. On the mountain, Mo Yunqi and the others all looked at Yi Xian. Lu Jioga spoke solemnly, "Don't act on impulse." Yi Xian shook his head, "I'm not acting on impulse." As he spoke he looked down. "These people aren't worthy of me, Yi Xian, and all of you risk your lives for them. We don't have the ability to be the saviors of the world. All we can do is protect ourselves." Everyone fell silent. bitterly disappointed. Needless to say, everyone here was bitterly disappointed. The reason why the borders of the state of Jiang were so peaceful was naturally because of Zhou Xian and Blue Waves Academy. But now they hadn't lost to the Realm Defense Alliance, but they had lost to the people they were supposed to protect. Mo Yunqi shook his head and sighed. I'm not afraid of strong opponents, but I'm afraid of pig-like teammates. As he spoke, he gazed at Zhou Xian. If we leave, where do you intend to go? Zhou Xian replied softly, disband on the spot. Disband. Everyone was stunned. Mo Yunqi touched Zhou Xian's forehead. Bandit Yi, you don't have a fever, do you? At this moment, Jian Chuchu spoke abruptly, it's time to disband. Everyone looked at Jian Chuchu and she spoke softly, now that the Realm Defense Alliance is personally taking action, the situation is completely different. We have to disband in order to protect ourselves. Protect ourselves. Zhou Xian nodded. Actually, we aren't really disbanding. Instead, we should split up and develop ourselves from the light to the dark. Mo Yunqi thought for a moment and said, right, our Blue Waves Academy is being targeted by the Realm Defense Alliance, and we don't have the strength to go against them. So splitting up is a way. All the others nodded successively. Jian Chuchu continued, if Blue Waves Academy continues like this, then we won't just be enemies with the Realm Defense Alliance, we'll be enemies with all the cultivators of Azure Province. To put it simply, we won't be friends with anyone. Since that's the case, why don't we retreat and develop ourselves in the dark? It's actually not a bad thing for us. Zhou Xian nodded. Let's do that. After we leave Blue Waves Academy, we'll immediately hide ourselves and develop ourselves. As for me, I also have something to deal with. When the time is right, I will summon everyone. I hope that no one will be missing by then. At this moment, Jian Chuchu suddenly walked over to Zhou Xian. Don't make us wait too long. With that, she turned around and left. Zhou Xian faced the side where Lu Jioga, Mo Yuan and Feng Lan were. Zhou Xian softly said, you three, I will have to trouble you to deal with the students of Blue Waves Academy. Mo Yuan smiled. Actually, I've long intended to take them out for a walk. Zhou Xian nodded slightly. With a flick of his finger, a spatial ring appeared in front of Mo Yuan. There are 100 million supreme-grade spiritual stones in this spatial ring. Although we've temporarily retired, they mustn't fall behind in their cultivation. Mo Yuan didn't refuse. He put away the spatial ring and left with Feng Lan. Zhou Xian faced Lu Jioga and the latter softly said, the Realm Defense Alliance won't let you off. However, they don't dare to kill you now. For you, time is of the essence. Since they still dare to target you, it means that although they don't dare to kill you now, they will definitely dare to do so in the future. Zhou Xian nodded. I understand. With that, he flicked his finger and a spatial ring flew in front of Lu Jioga. There are 500 million supreme-grade spiritual stones in this spatial ring. I'll have to trouble military advisor Lu to deal with the Blue Waves Dao soldiers. Lu Jioga put away the spatial ring. Don't worry, when we meet again they will give you a big surprise. Take care. With that, she turned around and left. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe walked in front of Zhou Xian. Mo Yunqi patted Zhou Xian's shoulder. Whenever you need me, Bai Zhe and I will be there. Also, when we meet again, I will definitely be able to defeat you. What if I can't defeat them? Bai Zhe suddenly said. Mo Yunqi glared at him. You talk too much. It didn't take long for the two of them to leave. After they walked far away, Mo Yunqi waved at Zhou Xian. Only Tuoba Yen and Jianji were left. Zhou Xian walked in front of Jianji and said softly, I promised old Ji that I would make Blue Waves Academy the best academy in the firmament world. I will definitely do what I said. Jianji nodded and then she remained silent for a while before she said, I have nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. Zhou Xian said softly, then you stay here. Jianji looked at Zhou Xian and Zhou Xian smiled slightly, and then he took out a golden box and passed it to Jianji. Within the box were 12 golden figures. Zhou Xian smiled, don't worry. Even though we will leave this place, so long as I'm alive, no one will dare to cause trouble. At the side, Tuoba Yen suddenly said, come with me. Jianji looked at Tuoba Yen and Tuoba Yen said softly, come with me to Ning Kingdom and we will at least be able to take care of each other. There will be a lot of trouble here in the end. Jianji thought for a moment and then she nodded. Tuoba Yen looked at Zhou Xian. What do you plan to do next? Zhou Xian said, I'm going to look for something. Once I find it, I'll come look for you. Tuoba Yen nodded slightly. I'll wait for you. With that she turned around and left with Jianji. But after a few steps, Jianji suddenly stopped. She turned around and walked to Yi Xian, and then she took out a spatial ring and passed it to Yi Xian. After that she turned around and left quickly with Tuoba Yen. The spatial ring was filled with food. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile and put the spatial ring away. Yi Xian arrived at the back of the mountain and he saw Jiangjiu before a waterfall. And behind Jiangjiu were 10 people. The auras of these 10 people were actually on par with the mercenaries of the monarch mercenary group. Of course, their battle strength might still be slightly inferior. When they saw Yi Xian, the 10 people hurriedly bowed deeply and then retreated to the side. Jiangjiu said softly, "My country of Zhang's imperial family is also preparing to leave." Yi Xian said, "I'm sorry." Jiangjiu shook his head. "It's none of your business. The Realm Guard Alliance has done this and all the cultivators of Azure Province hate you. Under such circumstances, if you continue to stay here, you will only be in trouble. Moreover, you've already done enough. If it weren't for Yi Xian, the country of Jiang would have already fallen." Unfortunately, many people could not see this, and only felt that it was because of Yi Xian that the Realm Guard Alliance and the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent had come to target Azure Province. In fact, these people did not think about Azure Billow Province. After all, Azure Billow Province did not have Yi Xian, and Azure Billow Province had already become a dead province. Jiangjiu turned to look at the 10 people behind her and said softly, "If you don't want to give up on Azure Billow Academy, then you can continue to nurture these 10 people because they have great potential." Yi Xian said with a smile, "I came to find you because I want you to continue to lead them. I will not give up on Azure Billow Academy because I promised Old Ji that one day Azure Billow Academy will definitely become famous in the entire Azure domain. I will do what I say." Jiangjiu said with a smile, "You definitely can, but now this is not just your goal, but the goal of everyone in Azure Billow Academy." After saying this, she gently hugged Yi Xian. "No matter how fast you grow, no matter how far you go, don't abandon the people around you, especially those who care about you." After saying this, she held Yi Xian's face and gently kissed it. Yi Xian's body stiffened and Jiangjiu grinned, "Blockhead." After saying this, she turned and left with the 10 people. Development. Now, everyone in Azure Billow Academy would continue to develop and seek their own opportunities. And they were also waiting for the day Yi Xian summoned them. Soon, all the people in Azure Billow Academy began to descend the mountain. Seeing the students of Azure Billow Academy descend the mountain, the people at the foot of the mountain cheered wildly. Among the students, some young students were so angry that their faces turned ashen, especially Yi Xian's cousin Yi Exen. She was so angry that she clenched her small hands, and her beautiful eyes were filled with anger. Because when they passed by the crowd, some people spoke very harshly, especially Yi Xian. At this moment, a man suddenly blocked in front of Yi Exen and the others. The man pointed at Yi Exen and the others, and his expression was quite ferocious. "Scram, quickly scram, a group of scourges. If not for you, how could Azure Prefecture be like this? It's all because of you causing chaos in Azure Prefecture." The man's voice stopped abruptly, because a sword had pierced the man's forehead. The scene instantly became quiet. Yi Exen and the others turned around, and not far away Yi Xian slowly walked over. When they saw Yi Xian, the crowd suddenly became angry, and among them a middle-aged man suddenly jumped out. He pointed at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, you scourge, you actually dared to kill people, you." Yi Xian raised his hand and slashed. The middle-aged man's head instantly flew. Blood spurted out like a fountain. In the scene, those who were excited and crazy suddenly calmed down, but there were still a few who were not sober. A man suddenly howled like a pig being slaughtered. "Yi Xian killed people. Yi Xian killed people." Everyone quickly looked this Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of the man. The man glared at Yi Xian, and just when he was about to speak, Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. The man's body directly split in the middle. It was extremely bloody. After killing this man with one slash, Yi Xian did not stop. He loosened his hand, the sword suddenly flew out, and soon the heads of the surrounding people flew one after another. In less than a breath's time, there were already dozens of people in the scene who had been beheaded by Yi Xian with one slash. At this moment, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over the crowd, and they immediately sobered up. Everyone stepped back. When they looked at Yi Xian, there was no excitement in their eyes anymore. There was only shock. Yi Xian ignored the crowd. He put away his sword and walked in front of Yi Xin and the others. Today, I will teach you a principle. First, protect yourself, protect the people you care about. Second, don't protect those you think are not worth it. As he spoke, he pointed at the crowd with his sword. These people are not worth it. Also, you can be a good person, but you can't be a good person. Because in this world, many people are cheap. When bad people bully them, they will smile and bow because they are afraid. On the contrary, when facing good people, they are not afraid at all because they think good people are easy to bully. To put it simply, many people bully the weak and fear the strong. After saying that, he pointed his sword into the distance. All of you, raise your heads and walk out of here. If anyone dares to say anything bad about you, I will beat him to death on the spot. Yes, last night I dreamed that I was beaten by a reader, and it was by a brick. The reason was, why didn't it break out in the middle of the month? And even asked me if I had forgotten. As he said that, he gave me another brick. To be honest, everyone must be rational and not reckless. This is a legal society. Chapter 257. Everyone present was looking at Yi Xian. Usually Yi Xian was amiable, especially in Blue Waves Academy. Not to mention outsiders, even the students of Blue Waves Academy rarely saw him angry. Explosive temper. Yi Xian's temper was also explosive, but he never had a bad temper with his own people. At this moment, these people in the surroundings were no longer his own people. A kind horse would be ridden and a kind man would be bullied. A person couldn't be devoid of conscience, couldn't be without humanity, couldn't have no bottom line, but more importantly, couldn't be without courage. If a person didn't even have courage, then what was the point of living? Human nature was good, but it was also accompanied by evil. Good, treat good people, treat your own people. Evil, naturally treat evil people. Because to treat evil people, you have to be more evil than them, more cruel than them, then they wouldn't dare to bully you. Repaying evil with good, this kind of thing Yi Xian would never do, and he also didn't want his students to do it. In the surroundings, along with Yi Xian's voice, the surrounding people retreated, because there were dozens of bloody heads under Yi Xian's feet. At this moment, they discovered that in fact the person in front of them wasn't someone to be trifled with. The surroundings were incomparably quiet, no one dared to talk, not a single one. Yi Xin and the students of Blue Waves Academy slightly bowed to Yi Xian, then walked away, and in front of them the crowd hastily separated to two sides, no one dared to stop them. Leave. All the students of Blue Waves Academy had tears in their eyes, especially Yi Xin, who cried until her face was like a cat. They had already regarded Blue Waves Academy as their home. Yi Xian remained silent. From the time he took over Blue Waves Academy until now, he had put in a lot of effort for Blue Waves Academy. He really had feelings for Blue Waves Academy. This time, disbanding Blue Waves Academy in fact was to protect Blue Waves Academy, or in other words, to give everyone in Blue Waves Academy a chance to develop themselves. Previously, Blue Waves Academy was too dependent on him. If this continued, he wouldn't be helping Blue Waves Academy but harming it. In the academy, everyone had to experience all kinds of tribulations to be able to grow better. He believed that when they met again, everyone would be different. After a while, Yi Xian turned around and walked up the mountain. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly stopped. Scram! Everyone was stunned. Yi Xian raised his hand and waved. A wave of sword light slashed out and more than 10 people on the right were killed on the spot. Everyone was horrified and hurriedly turned around to flee. Yi Xian chuckled. See, many times when you speak nicely they don't listen. But when you make a move, everyone becomes obedient. Looks like I, Yi Xian, am born to be a villain. You are an evil person. A voice rang out from behind Yi Xian. Soon an old man appeared behind Yi Xian. It was Situ Ming from the Situ clan. Yi Xian sat on a rock by the side. The Realm Defense Alliance has personally made a move. They must be impatient to get their hands on the Origin Heart. You guys should prepare yourselves. Situ Ming walked in front of Yi Xian. Didn't you say that you can stop them? Yi Xian spread out his hands. You also said that if a true defensive realm expert attacks me, you guys will attack. But just now, when Supreme Lord Lu attacked, none of you did anything. Situ Ming was silent. Supreme Lord Lu. This was the top expert of the Azure Firmament world. And he had the Realm Defense Alliance behind him. They didn't want to fight to the death, or rather they didn't dare to. Yi Xian smiled. Although we can't stop the Realm Defense Alliance, they are still our common enemy, right? Situ Ming glanced at Yi Xian. The Realm Defense Alliance won't let you go and some people won't let you go either. Yi Xian smiled. Apart from the Realm Defense Alliance, the one who wants me dead the most is your Situ clan. Why is your Situ clan also attacking me? Situ Ming said coldly. Don't worry, my Situ clan is not in the mood to tangle with you. You will know who I am talking about soon. Finally, be careful of the Realm Defense Alliance. They will never allow a second Firmament Sword Master to appear in the Azure Firmament world. After saying that, he turned around and disappeared on the spot. Not long after Situ Ming left, another old man appeared in front of Yi Xian. Fifth Floor Master. The fifth floor master smiled bitterly. The old man just returned, but you have already disbanded the Azure Waves Academy. Yi Xian said with a smile. Only temporarily. The fifth floor master nodded. The things you asked me to auction before, I got a total of 7 billion high-grade spiritual stones. After saying that, he flicked his finger and a storage ring fell in front of Yi Xian. 7 billion high-grade spiritual stones. Yi Xian kept the storage ring. This amount of wealth was enough for him to do a lot of things. The fifth floor master hesitated. What do you plan to do next? Yi Xian said with a smile. I have something to do. The fifth floor master said solemnly. Be careful of the Realm Defense Alliance. Now they have tore off their disguise. Now they can do anything. Realm Defense Alliance. Yi Xian nodded. Don't worry, I will be more careful. The fifth floor master patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly. If you need anything, contact me at any time. Take care. After saying that, he turned around and left. After the fifth floor master left, Yi Xian met another group of people, the only group on the mountain. Lu Banzwang, Ling Han and the others. Lu Banzwang and the others walked in front of Yi Xian and Yi Xian smiled. We have just reunited and now we have to separate. Ling Han said gravely. Brother Yi, are you really fighting with the Realm Defense Alliance? Yi Xian shrugged. You can say so. Hearing this, Ling Han sighed softly. This Realm Defense Alliance is not simple. Yi Xian smiled and said, it can't be helped. If I kneel and admit my mistake and am willing to be a slave, perhaps it will be fine. Unfortunately, I am a person who would rather die standing than live kneeling. Ling Han shook his head. This Realm Defense Alliance has never had a good reputation. However, no one dares to voice their anger because they are really powerful. Aside from the Azure Sword sect that suppressed them in the past, now that 1,000 years have passed, there is almost no force in the entire Azure world that can oppose them, and the Azure world can be said to be under their control. At this point, he looked at Yi Xian and said, Brother Yi, you are in great trouble. Yi Xian smiled and said, Don't worry, they don't dare to openly attack me. As for you guys, return to the Divine Central Continent first because I will go there soon. At that time we brothers will meet again. As for now, you won't be of much help even if you stay. Going back and cultivating is the most important thing. We brothers have plenty of time in the future. As he spoke, he pointed a finger and a storage ring appeared in front of Ling Han and the others. In each storage ring, there were 100 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Ling Han and the others exchanged a look and finally Ling Han shook his head and said, Brother Yi, we don't want these supreme-grade spirit stones. You keep them, I take them. Yi Xian smiled and said, I have more. As for you guys, hurry up and reach the Myriad Laws tier, Law Defending tier. Otherwise, I won't call you when I fight in the future. Ling Han still wanted to say something, but Lu Banzwang put away the supreme-grade spirit stones, and then walked in front of Yi Xian and said, Live well, I don't want to collect your corpse. After saying this, she turned and left. Yi Xian. Soon Ling Han and the others left. This time he was the only one left in the entire Azure Waves Mountain. This time he was truly alone in the world without any worries. Because he didn't have to worry about anyone, the only one he had to worry about was himself. Easy. After letting go of his identity as the Dean and Big Brother, he suddenly found that his whole body was much more relaxed. A moment later, Yi Xian arrived at the Martyr's Palace, which was now empty, because the spirit tablets of Elder Ji and the others had been taken away. Yi Xian sat in front of the palace, then took out a wine gourd and began to drink slowly. As he drank, scenes of the past appeared in his mind. Yi Ling and Lanxiu Zhangjiu Ji Anji Mo Yunqi by Zai Lu Banzwang Ling Han. Elder Ji. As he drank, Yi Xian began to feel a little drunk. Azure Province. As Yi Xian disbanded Azure Waves Academy, the entire Azure Province was in an uproar. Countless people could be said to be cheering. Especially in the Jiang Nation there was even more cheering. In the eyes of countless people, since Yi Xian disbanded Azure Waves Academy, the trouble in Azure Province would naturally be over. At the same time that Yi Xian disbanded Azure Waves Academy, the Jiang Nation's imperial family also chose to retire, and the army was also disbanded. Ordinary armies were of no use in these chaotic times. Jiang Yuetian knew very well that without Yi Xian and Azure Waves Academy, if the Jiang Nation's imperial family did not choose to retire, only death awaited them. Thus, the entire Jiang Nation's imperial capital was now a city of freedom, because no one came out to maintain order. There used to be the Jiang Nation's imperial family and Azure Waves Academy, but now there was no more. After the cheers, the Jiang Nation's imperial capital directly fell into chaos. Killing, plundering, human nature. Without order, the darkest side of a person's heart could be revealed without reservation. Especially in these chaotic times, some people were completely releasing themselves in a frenzy. Most importantly, the cultivators of the divine central continent that Yi Xian had chased away had returned. There were over 20,000 of them, and most of them were at the Nether Passage Realm and Divine Union Realm. The 20,000 cultivators arrived at the imperial capital of the Jiang country. Some of the cultivators in the Jiang country hastily left the city. When they saw the two cultivators, their faces sank. "They're back." One of the native cultivators from Jiang country walked forward and cupped his fists. "Everyone, Yi Xian has already disbanded Blue Waves Academy. He has also been driven away by us. If you want to find him, you can go somewhere else." Meanwhile, a fist suddenly smashed against the man's head. Bang! The man's head exploded. All the cultivators of Azure Province were dumbstruck. It was a middle-aged man from the Divine Central Continent who attacked. The middle-aged man laughed coldly. "Look for Yi Xian? Why do you want to look for him? Are you courting death? It's exactly because he left that we've returned. Brothers kill." As soon as he finished speaking, over 20,000 people charged into the city. Chapter 258. They were crushed. The native cultivators of Azure Province were no match for the cultivators from the Divine Central Continent. They were crushed as soon as the battle began. The native cultivators of Azure Province didn't fight to the death. Instead, they fled madly. The more they fled, the more likely they would die. In the past, these cultivators had been prey to Yi Xian and the Blue Tide Dao soldiers. Now they'd become the hunters. Shrill cries resounded incessantly in front of the city gates. Despair. Countless native cultivators of Azure Province despaired. They weren't a match for the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent at all. The disparity in strength was too great. Only now did they realize that the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent hadn't come to Azure Province for Yi Xian, but for them. They'd naively believed that Azure Province would be at peace once Yi Xian left. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's departure would only make the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent even more unbridled. In next to no time, the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent charged into the city. The capital of the Jiang state had fallen. A group of cultivators from the Divine Central Continent had gathered at the foot of Blue Tide Mountain. All of them were looking at the mountain and no one ascended it. "Should we destroy Blue Tide Academy?" someone suggested. The middle-aged man in the lead looked at the mountain for a long time. In the end, he shook his head. "The strong deserve respect. Let's go." With that, the group turned around and left. With the disbandment of Blue Tide Academy, Yi Xian's disappearance, and the return of the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect to Azure Province had fallen into chaos once more. Without order, the hearts of the people were in chaos. Coupled with the barbaric invasion of foreign powers, Azure Province was in utter chaos. The only relatively normal states were the Ning State and the Great Cloud Empire. However, both of them had pulled back their defensive lines. Especially the Ning State. Tuoba Yen had gathered the cultivators of Ning State in the capital, and everyone had banded together to defend. Coupled with the 12 metal colossi that Yi Xian had given her, Unless an expert at the true Imperial Dharma realm attacked Ning's state, it would be able to protect itself. Moreover, everyone knew that Zhou Xian was backing Ning's state. Therefore, anyone who wanted to attack Ning's state couldn't avoid thinking about Zhou Xian. After all, Zhou Xian hadn't died yet. Apart from Ning country, Great Cloud Empire had also shrunk its entire defensive line because it was impossible for Lian Wanli to protect the entire Great Cloud territory. However, there wasn't anyone or any force that dared to fight Lian Wanli to the death. It should be known that not only was Lian Wanli powerful, she was also related to Zhou Xian. Therefore, when Lian Wanli withdrew her defensive line, there wasn't anyone that dared to offend her, nor was there a need to cause trouble for her. Qingzhou was very big, there was no need to find these hard bones to chew. It was worth mentioning that all the places in Azure province that were related to Zhou Xian were relatively safe. For example, the state of Zhang's Azure City, where Zhou Xian had been born, had not been invaded by a single cultivator from the divine central continent. No one wanted to provoke Zhou Xian. But in many places, many people were still cheering for Zhou Xian to disband Blue Waves Academy. They believed that as long as Zhou Xian disbanded Blue Waves Academy, the Realm Defense Alliance and the cultivators of the divine central continent would withdraw from Qingzhou. Not only that, but some people in some places, even though they knew that the cultivators of the divine central continent didn't leave Qingzhou after Zhou Xian disbanded Blue Waves Academy, but instead intensified their plundering of Qingzhou, hated Zhou Xian even more. In their opinion, if it weren't for Zhou Xian's resistance, the cultivators of the divine central continent wouldn't be so angry. It was precisely because of Zhou Xian's resistance that the cultivators of the divine central continent were enraged. All of this was because of Zhou Xian. Even though Zhou Xian disbanded Blue Waves Academy and disappeared without a trace, countless cultivators of Qingzhou still believed that Zhou Xian was the sinner of Qingzhou. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian had already quietly left the state of Jiang and headed south of Qingzhou. Along the way, if Zhou Xian encountered any evil cultivators of the divine central continent, he would casually strike them with his sword. However, he would no longer do something as great as protecting the Qingzhou. The mysterious woman had said something to him before she left. Do what you have the ability to do. And he didn't have the ability to save the world. Moreover, some people weren't worth the lives of Zhou Xian and his brothers to protect. Zhou Xian was no saint, and he couldn't do something as virtuous as complain. You curse me and want me dead and I have to protect you? He didn't know if a saint could do it, but he couldn't. He'd worked hard for the sake of this land. He could resist the cultivators of the divine central continent, but he couldn't resist the selfishness and greed of the native cultivators of Qingzhou. Right now, all he wanted to do was to do what he could and protect those around him who were worthy of protection. At this moment, his goal was the Nanlian mountain range to the south of Qingzhou. This was because the god on the second floor wanted him to go there. There was a Dao law. While the god on the second floor had been gone, besides fighting a few battles with the Realm Defense Alliance, he'd also searched for a Dao law for him. No, it should be said that the god on the second floor had searched for himself. If he wanted to come out earlier, he had to find a second Dao law. And he himself wanted to find a second Dao law as soon as possible. Only with a Dao law could he better control the prison pagoda. Moreover, with a second Dao law he might be able to open the third level. Although the people imprisoned in the pagoda were extremely dangerous, if he handled them well they might become useful assistants. Take the god on the second floor for example. Although he was usually very fierce, he had helped him a lot. Zhou Xian quickened his pace. His top priority now was to improve his strength. It would be best if he could kill true defensive Dharma realm experts even without the help of the prison pagoda. Soon Zhou Xian rode the black flame horse into the vast mountains, galloping like a gust of wind. Inside the prison pagoda, thumping sounds came from the second floor from time to time. Zhou Xian had no idea what the god on the second floor was doing. In any case, he didn't want to provoke the god on the second floor now. Ever since the god had returned, he realized that the god's temper was getting worse. Especially now that the mysterious woman wasn't around, he didn't dare to provoke the god on the second floor at all. After all, he still couldn't beat the god on the second floor. At times like this he had to keep a low profile. Zhou Xian was very fast. Just as he was about to pass through a dense forest, there was a sudden change. A powerful pressure suddenly shrouded him. Boom! The black flame horse beneath him crumbled immediately, and he was forced to retreat several hundred feet. Zhou Xian stopped in his tracks. In his original position stood a black-robed man. The black-robed man's entire body was covered in a black robe, so his face couldn't be seen. A true Imperial Magic Realm expert. The black-robed man raised his right hand slightly. In an instant, the space around Xian started to distort layer by layer like a fried dough twist. It was extremely frightening. Xian opened his palm and a sword suddenly appeared. In the next moment he held the sword with both hands and slashed forward. Bang! As an explosion rang out, Xian retreated several hundred feet in a row. As soon as he came to a stop, the moment he stopped, dozens of trees behind him turned into dust. Xian looked up at the black-robed man not far away. The black-robed man's body suddenly turned illusory, and Xian's expression changed. A powerful sword intent suddenly enveloped his body. Kindness sword intent. The moment the kindness sword intent appeared, a palm suddenly appeared above his head, but it was blocked by the kindness sword intent. However, as the black-robed man pressed down lightly, the kindness sword intent instantly crumbled, and Xian instantly retreated more than 400 feet. This time, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. A true Imperial Magic Realm expert. Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his expression was solemn. This was his first time fighting with a true Imperial Magic Realm expert, and at this moment he felt that there was a huge gap between him and a true Imperial Magic Realm expert. This was a difference in quality, and this difference could not be made up for with equipment. After a moment of silence, Xian suddenly leaped like a white crane flying into the air. In the air, the sword in his hand shook violently, and a powerful sword force swept out like a torrent. Before the sword arrived, the force arrived first. Below, the black-robed man stood quietly. Although the ground around him began to shake violently, he was very calm. When the force reached the top of his head, he raised his right hand and gently lifted it up. Boom! The space shook, and the sword force released by Xian instantly disappeared without a trace. At this moment, Xian's sword had already slashed down. On the body of the sword there was a dark sword intent. Evil sword intent. At this moment, the black-robed man opened his right hand, and then he grabbed lightly in the air. In an instant, the space where Xian's sword descended fluctuated, and the sword seemed to be stuck in space and was unable to move an inch forward. Xian suddenly roared furiously, and he held the sword with both hands as he pressed it down. The evil sword intent instantly exploded. Bang! The space trembled and the black-robed man retreated over 10 steps. Whereas Xian had returned to his original position. The black-robed man did not attack again. He glanced at his palm and there was a bloody mark on his palm. Just now Xian's sword had pierced through his skin. The black-robed man was silent for a moment, and then he looked up at Xian. It's rare for you to have such attainments in the sword Dao at such a young age. Unfortunately, you want to go against the Realm Defense Alliance. You really overestimate yourself. The black-robed man's voice was hoarse, and it was obvious that he was doing it on purpose. As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack again when Xian suddenly laughed. You're not from the Realm Defense Alliance at all. If I'm not wrong, you're Situ Ming, right? The black-robed man stopped, and after a moment of silence he took off his black robe. It was Situ Ming. Situ Ming looked coldly at Xian. How did you guess it was me? Xian laughed. If the Realm Defense Alliance wanted to kill me, they would do it openly. Otherwise, they would have sent someone to kill me a long time ago. Besides the Realm Defense Alliance, only your Situ clan has a reason to kill me. Because you don't want me to reveal that you're going against the Realm Defense Alliance, right? Situ Ming stared at Xian. You're much smarter than I thought. Xian laughed. Situ Ming, do you know why the Realm Defense Alliance doesn't dare to kill me openly? At this point he still wanted to say something, but Situ Ming shook his head. I don't want to know. The old man only knows that I can't listen to your nonsense, Xian. Otherwise I won't be able to kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged directly at Xian. Xian's expression froze. Genius 1 second to remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 259. Situ Ming did not know how Xian managed to convince the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect to retreat, but he knew that if he continued listening to Xian he would not be able to do anything. This was because the Devil sect and the Ghost sect could be persuaded to retreat by Zhou Xian, and the Situ clan was not much stronger than the Devil sect and the Ghost sect. Zhou Xian must die. No matter how powerful Zhou Xian's background was, he must die. This was Situ Ming's stance. This was because Zhou Xian had something going on with Xianxia of the Yin clan, and Xianxia was a woman that the Situ clan had to get their hands on. Apart from that, if Zhou Xian colluded with the Realm Defense Alliance, it would undoubtedly be very disadvantageous to the Situ clan. Therefore, Situ Ming chose to make a move directly to avoid unnecessary trouble. Zhou Xian did not expect that Situ Ming would not even give him time to deceive Zhou Xian. How could he fight? He could not defeat him. However, Situ Ming had already arrived in front of him with a violent force. This force was like a storm in the ocean, as if it could destroy everything. Zhou Xian did not dare to be distracted. He quickly calmed his qi and focused. In the next moment he took a step forward and slashed down with his sword. A sword to decide life and death. The momentum of this sword was not much weaker than Situ Ming's. Boom. As soon as the two forces collided, the dense forest in the area was instantly destroyed. Zhou Xian was directly thrown dozens of feet away, and he only stopped when he stabbed his sword into the ground with both hands. Situ Ming was also pushed back dozens of feet. At this moment, Situ Ming's expression was solemn as he stared at Zhou Xian. I've underestimated you. No wonder the Realm Defense Alliance wants to kill you. If I were the Realm Defense Alliance, I would not let you live either. As he spoke, he looked to the right of Zhou Xian. Let's attack together. As soon as Situ Ming's voice fell, an old man walked out from the right of Zhou Xian. He was also a true defensive magic realm expert. Two true defensive magic realm experts. Zhou Xian's expression was rather ugly. He didn't expect that the Situ clan would actually send out two true Imperial Dharma realms to kill him. They thought too highly of him. Situ Ming seemed to know what Zhou Xian was thinking, and he immediately sneered. That day, Kuraki Academy didn't kill you because they didn't send their supreme experts at the beginning. Otherwise, you would have died 100 times over. The old man is not as stupid as Kuraki Gakuen. Since I want to get rid of you, I naturally won't give you any chance. As he spoke, he and the old man beside him were about to attack. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly said, "Wait." As he spoke, he said seriously, "I think that our previous cooperation and friendship can still be salvaged." "You," Situ Ming ridiculed. "Cut the crap. Even if you destroy the heavens with your words, the old man will still kill you today." With that, he disappeared. On the other side, the old man suddenly disappeared as well. He turned into a black line and headed straight for Zhou Xian. Clearly he wanted to kill Zhou Xian. How terrifying was it when two true Imperial Dharma realm experts attacked at the same time. Zhou Xian took a step forward, and an illusory Xiaota suddenly appeared between his brows. The Prison Pagoda. The sky instantly darkened when the Pagoda of Purgatory appeared, and Situ Ming and the old man seemed as if they'd been frozen on the spot. A pitch-black, prisoner character hovered above their heads. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. As soon as the prison tower appeared, Zhou Xian's whole body started to tremble. He was trembling very much. His face was also twitching. It looked quite terrifying. Situ Ming's face was filled with terror as he stood opposite Zhou Xian. No matter how he tried, he couldn't move at all. Situ Ming raised his head to look at Zhou Xian and said with a trembling voice, What is this?" The corners of Zhou Xian's mouth curled up into a hideous smile. Guess. At this moment he was trembling as he spoke. Situ Ming was about to speak when Zhou Xian suddenly said angrily, "Withdraw." With that, the prison pagoda violently trembled. In the next moment, Situ Ming and the old man disappeared. When they reappeared, they were inside the prison pagoda. Within the prison pagoda, Situ Ming and the old man looked around in terror. Everything that was happening before them was beyond their understanding. At that moment, the prisoner character above their heads started to slowly turn red. Situ Ming was greatly shocked when he sensed this, and he hurriedly said, "Zhou Xian, there's room for discussion. The old man swears that if we get out, we won't take revenge. The Situ family is willing to submit to you. I said I wanted to chat with you, but you didn't listen. I don't want to chat anymore." This was Zhou Xian's reply. These words were the last words Situ Ming would ever hear in his life. Soon, Situ Ming and the old man turned into nothingness, leaving behind only two spatial rings. Outside, Zhou Xian's head felt heavy and he collapsed to the ground. At that moment he felt the world spin around him and he wanted to sleep. He couldn't sleep. Yi Xian bit the tip of his tongue, and the intense pain made him much more clear-headed. At that moment, a small, earth, character suddenly appeared on his forehead. Dao Law. Lying on the ground, Yi Xian felt an endless stream of earth power converging towards him. The earth power eventually surged into his body and started to repair his body. At that moment Yi Xian felt much more relaxed. After becoming more clear-headed, Yi Xian hurriedly checked the prison pagoda. As he had expected, the prison pagoda had closed again. However, this time he had supreme-grade spirit stones. Now he had 2 heaven-grade swords, a heaven-grade armor for 5 billion supreme-grade spirit stones and a supreme-grade spirit vein. He had brought this supreme-grade spirit vein out from Blue Waves Academy. Now that Blue Waves Academy was temporarily disbanded, he naturally had to take this supreme-grade spirit vein with him. Yi Xian began to let the prison pagoda devour the supreme-grade spirit stones. Soon the prison pagoda had devoured 1 billion supreme-grade spirit stones. However, the prison pagoda did not open. What was going on? Yi Xian's mind was filled with doubts. After a moment of silence, he continued to let the prison pagoda devour 100 million, 200 million, 500 million, 11. Finally, after the prison pagoda devoured another 1 billion, the prison pagoda opened again. 2 billion supreme-grade spirit stones. Yi Xian lay on the ground, his face filled with despair. 2 billion. That was twice as much as before. Yi Xian's heart was bleeding. At that moment he wanted nothing more than to turn Situ Ming and the old man's bones into ashes. The 4.5 billion supreme-grade spirit stones were devoured before they could even warm up in his hands. Most importantly, there was an extra generation this time. If he used the prison pagoda again next time, he did not dare to think any further. Because if he used it again and needed twice as much to open it again, Yi Xian wanted to cry but no tears came out. This prison pagoda was too damn expensive. Just like that, Yi Xian lay on the ground for a whole hour before he slowly recovered. After he recovered, he hurriedly took out Situ Ming and the old man's storage rings. In the first storage ring there was a heaven-grade treasure. It was a spear. The spear was 5 feet long and its entire body was crimson red as if it was made from lava. It exuded a scorching aura. However, the tip of the spear was as cold as frost, bone-chilling. What a good spear. When he saw the spear, Yi Xian was shocked. The grade of this spear might be higher than his 2 heaven-grade swords. Heaven-grade treasures were also divided into good and bad ones. Simply put, they were supreme-grade, high-grade and low-grade. This spear was at least a high-grade heaven-grade treasure. It was priceless. Yi Xian's previous unhappiness was instantly swept away. But this was normal. Situ Ming was the patriarch of a large force after all. How could he not have any supreme-grade treasures? Yi Xian took out the spear. There were 2 words engraved on the handle. Incinerate. Incinerate spear. Yi Xian held the spear in his hand and waved it lightly. In an instant, a fiery glow spread out from the spear. Wherever the fiery glow passed, the surrounding trees were directly burned to ashes. The spear had a fire attribute. What a good spear. Yi Xian grinned. If he sold this spear, it could fetch at least 3 billion supreme-grade spirit stones. One had to know that a heaven-grade treasure was at least 2 billion supreme-grade spirit stones. No, it should be said that it was impossible to buy a heaven-grade treasure with supreme-grade spirit stones. Only purple origin crystals could buy a heaven-grade treasure. What a bargain. Yi Xian grinned from ear to ear. He put away the incinerate spear and continued to check. Apart from this heaven-grade treasure, there was no other true ranked treasure in Situ Ming's storage ring, nor were there any cultivation skills or martial skills. Just as Yi Xian was feeling a little disappointed, he suddenly saw something. Yi Xian waved his hand. Soon, a thick book and a black badge appeared in his hand. Yi Xian flipped open the book. He was a little dumbfounded after taking a look. Clan history. It was the Situ clan's history. Not only was the history of the Situ clan recorded, but it also recorded everyone in the Situ clan. Apart from that, there were also some clan secrets. For example, how many people did the Situ clan have, how much wealth they had, how many forces they had secretly cultivated, how many spies they had in other clans, how many illegitimate children they had. Everything was recorded clearly in the book. Yi Xian closed the clan history book. His heart was tumbling like waves. 80 billion. The Situ clan's current wealth amounted to more than 80 billion top-grade spirit stones, as well as over 300,000 purple origin crystals. Purple Genesis crystals were much more precious than top-grade spirit stones because the spirit chi within them was no ordinary spirit chi. This spirit chi was called Purple Genesis chi, an extremely rare type of spirit chi in this world. One would need around 50,000 purple origin crystals to purchase a heaven-grade treasure. At this moment, Zhou Xian also discovered that there were chi undulations on the clan history. It was clearly a small formation. He guessed that the formation was a destruction formation. In other words, if anything happened to Situ Ming, it should be able to instantly destroy the clan history because it was just too important to the Situ clan. It absolutely could not be exposed. Unfortunately, Situ Ming had been imprisoned in the World Prison Pagoda and could not resist at all, let alone destroy the clan history. 80 billion top-grade spirit stones and several 100,000 purple origin crystals. Just the thought of it made Zhou Xian excited. However, he soon calmed down. This wealth belonged to the Situ clan and had nothing to do with him. No. Zhou Xian's mind raced. Who said it had nothing to do with him? Zhou Xian looked at the pitch-black token in his hand. The Patriarch's token. The Patriarch's token. After a moment of silence, Zhou Xian suddenly burst into laughter. Everything in this world was so beautiful. P.S. Weakly asking, do you still remember Xiaobai? Do you think she will appear in this book? If she does, how will she appear? Chapter 260. The Patriarch's Token. Zhou Xian naturally knew what the Patriarch's token represented. It represented the patriarch of the clan. With the Patriarch's token and the clan's history, he could do a lot of things. Zhou Xian put away the Situ clan's Patriarch's token and the clan's history, then continued to look at the next storage ring. There were no heaven-grade treasures in the second storage ring, but there were more than 1,000 purple origin crystals. Apart from that, there was also a palm-sized snow lotus. The snow lotus was sparkling and translucent, exuding a chilling aura. A heavenly treasure. There were some mystical objects in the world. These mystical objects absorbed the essence of the sun and moon and were nourished by heaven and earth. They contained great energy. The snow lotus in front of him was obviously such a mystical object. This mystical object could increase one's cultivation. If it was used by a special person, the effect would be doubled. Apart from the snow lotus, there were some miscellaneous items in the storage ring, but they were not worth much. At least for him now, they were not worth much. In Zhou Xian's eyes, ordinary items were not worth much at all. After putting away the storage ring, Zhou Xian continued to move forward happily. Although he had spent nearly 2 billion supreme-grade spirit stones to activate the World Prison Pagoda this time, the harvest was not small. In short, he had made a profit. This time Zhou Xian did not travel in a blatant manner. After activating the cultivation technique, escape, he hid himself. It could be said that apart from true Imperial Law Realm experts, it was difficult for ordinary people to discover him. Moreover, even true Imperial Law Realm experts would not be able to discover him unless they were looking for him deliberately. After a while, Zhou Xian completely disappeared into the distance. Not long after Zhou Xian left, a shadow suddenly appeared in the field. The shadow stood there in silence for a moment, then said softly, "Miss, did you see that? Young master has reached the Sword Emperor realm at the age of 19. Even in our Duga clan he is outstanding. And Miss Yi Ling has stepped into the 10,000 Dharma realm before the age of 15. Moreover, her physique is special and extremely rare. If you knew this in the Serene Prison, you would be relieved." As his voice fell, his entire body gradually became illusory and disappeared completely in a short while. The southern Link mountain range was located in the south of Qingzhou. It was remote and sparsely populated. There were only endless mountain ranges. Zhou Xian's goal this time was this vast mountain range. Dao laws. He couldn't wait to find the second Dao law now. Because he discovered that if he used the laws of Dao to power the World Prison Pagoda, the World Prison Pagoda's backlash on his body would be much smaller. One had to know that he was almost done for when he didn't have the Dao law. And just now, even though he suffered a backlash, he didn't faint. Evidently, this law of Dao was extremely important. One day later, Zhou Xian arrived at the Nanlian mountain range. After entering the mountain range, Yi Xian proceeded in the direction that the guru on the second floor had told him. In the vast mountain range, Yi Xian ran all the way. Occasionally he would encounter a few demonic beasts, but these demonic beasts did not notice him. Under the guidance of the god on the second floor, Yi Xian came to the depths of the mountain range. After about an hour he stopped. On the ground not far in front of him, there was a huge abyss that was hundreds of feet wide and bottomless. Looking down from his position, it was pitch black and there was even a black fog lingering. It was extremely eerie. His intuition told him that this was definitely not a good place. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang in his head. Jump! Jump! The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He took a step forward. The abyss was pitch black and he couldn't see anything. Yi Xian was a little hesitant. His intuition told him that nothing good would happen if he jumped down. Inside the World Prison Pagoda, the second floor started to ring again. Obviously it was rushing him. This chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. He did it. Yi Xian hesitated for a while before saying, well, let me ask you something. Since you found the Tao Law, why didn't you bring it to me? This was something that Yi Xian had been wondering about. Since the guru on the second floor dared to find trouble with the Realm Defense Alliance, there was no doubt about his strength. And since he found the Tao Law but didn't bring it back, there was definitely a problem. A huge problem. Following Yi Xian's voice, the World Prison Pagoda suddenly quieted down. But very quickly the second floor started to shake violently. Not only the second floor but even the first floor was shaking violently. Yi Xian instantly felt a little dizzy. He didn't feel good at all. This guy was going crazy. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Don't mess around. I won't ask anymore, okay? The World Prison Pagoda instantly quieted down. Jump! That voice rang out again. Yi Xian took another step forward. His expression gradually calmed down. As if he had thought of something, he laughed at himself. Why am I so afraid of the slightest thing? As he spoke, he leaped up and directly jumped down. Ever since the mysterious woman left, he found that he had become a little afraid of the slightest thing. In reality, when something must be done, one should do it without hesitation and not be afraid of the slightest thing. The more he thought, the more questions he had. The more questions he had, the more fearful he felt. At the bottom of the abyss, Yi Xian was falling at a high speed. He was falling very fast. Beside his ears was the cold wind. This continued for an unknown amount of time. Finally, he felt his feet touch the ground. It was pitch black underground. Luckily, he wasn't using his eyes. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't be able to see anything. At this moment, he still hadn't reached the bottom of the abyss. Now he was standing on a stone platform that extended out from the mountain wall. Below the stone platform, he still couldn't see the bottom. On the surrounding mountain walls, there were green vines as thick as an arm and weeds everywhere. There was no sound or aura. Go down. At this moment, the god on the second floor spoke again. Yi Xian nodded. He grabbed the green vine beside him and followed it down. Just like this, after descending for a full hour, he finally felt his feet touch the ground. There was water under his feet. No, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed. It wasn't water under his feet, it was blood. Blood. In an instant, Yi Xian was on full alert. He quickly asked, God on the second floor, is there any danger? After a moment of silence, the god on the second floor suddenly said, I'm not telling you. Faster, thief. Yi Xian almost went berserk. Are you kidding me? At this time he still has to be arrogant? He really couldn't beat him. Otherwise he would really want to beat this god on the second floor. What a strange temper. He had to be cured. Unfortunately he couldn't beat him. Yi Xian took a deep breath and extinguished the thought of beating him up. He showed a smile that he thought was very, very gentle, and used the most gentle voice he had ever used in his life. God, may I ask, is there any danger here? After a while, a voice came from the second floor. Yes. Yi Xian's smile became brighter. What danger? I don't know. This time the second floor answered very quickly. Yi Xian's smile froze. Don't know what you're talking about. After a while, Yi Xian shook his head and continued forward. There was a lot of blood under his feet and the smell of blood was also very strong, especially as he went forward. It was definitely not a good place. This was Yi Xian's intuition. After walking for an unknown amount of time, a blood-red flame suddenly appeared in front of him. The flame kept floating in front of him. Xian felt his heart beating a little faster, even though cultivators. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Humans weren't afraid, but they were still a little fearful of the unknown. The flame was blood red and only the size of a palm. It fluttered about, causing Xian to panic. But soon Xian calmed down. He continued to move forward calmly. As he walked, he suddenly said, "Sai, the clan is really too much. I came here to train, but they still sent more than 10 true Imperial Magic Realm experts to follow me secretly. Seriously, what's the point of training?" As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed. To think that the Yi family controls the heavenly worlds and has hundreds of true Imperial Magic Realm experts. Who would dare to bully me when I'm training outside? Seriously, why would they send people to follow me? Not far away, the ghastly flame suddenly trembled and slowly floated backwards. Xian's expression was calm as he continued forwards. At the same time, his body gave off a powerful sword aura. Sword Emperor aura. It was as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know he was the Sword Emperor. Xian continued. "The elder ancestor is really too much. He said that I'm only 18 years old, but he insisted that I suppress my cultivation level and my sword cultivation. If he didn't suppress it, I would have broken through the Sword Emperor and become a Sword Immortal long ago." As he spoke, he deeply sighed. "Forget it, suppress it then. I'll pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger when I have nothing to do." Not far away, the blood-red flame gradually retreated until it completely disappeared into the darkness. Xian quickened his pace and was slightly excited. This place is gloomy and not simple. I hope that a powerful enemy will come so that my trip won't be in vain. As he spoke, he sped up again. At this moment, the space in front of him suddenly trembled and an invisible door blocked in front of him. Space. A true Imperial Magic Realm expert. Xian's heart trembled. The person who had secretly attacked was at least a true Imperial Magic Realm expert. Xian glanced around and said in a cold voice, "Who are you? How dare you block my way?" At this moment, a cold voice suddenly rang out in the darkness. "Where did this brat come from? This is not a place you should be. Hurry up and scram before the old man has any killing intent." Scram? Xian was stunned and then laughed crazily. "What are you laughing at?" In the darkness, the voice rang out. Xian faced the distance and laughed. "In this azure world, even the Realm Defense Alliance is just a servant of my Yi clan. You dare to ask me to scram? How arrogant of you. Do you know that with a single order from my Yi clan, not to mention this place, even the entire azure world will be wiped out?" "Yi clan? What Yi clan? I have never heard of it," the voice said again. Xian snorted. "You have never heard of it, but have you heard of me, Xian?" "No." In the darkness, the mysterious person replied. Xian shook his head. "You have never heard of me. It seems that you are either not from this world or have stayed here for a long time. Let me tell you, I, Xian, am the most outstanding swordsman in the history of Azure World. I am unprecedented and will never be surpassed." As he said this, he once again released his powerful Sword Emperor aura. The abyss suddenly became silent. After a while, the mysterious person suddenly said, "8,000 years ago, a person who called himself the Azure World Sword Master came here. He seemed to be more monstrous than you." "Oh damn." Xian's expression froze. What the hell? He had run into a god. What should he do? How should he act? Xian's brain worked quickly. Very quickly, his lips curled up and he continued forward. "Senior actually knows about the Azure World Sword Master. It seems that Senior is not an ordinary person." As he said this, he smiled. "I have created a sword technique. Please give me some pointers." As he said this, he opened his palm and a sword appeared in his hand. In the next moment, a powerful sword aura surged out from the sword. "One sword to decide life and death." The mysterious person's voice suddenly rang out from afar. His voice was filled with shock and disbelief. End of this chapter. Chapter 261. One sword to decide life and death. Xian held the sword in his hand and pointed it towards the ground. The sword in his hand contained a terrifying sword aura, like a volcano that was about to erupt. Sword aura. This sword technique, no, strictly speaking, it wasn't a sword technique, it was a belief in the way of the sword. The mysterious man was obviously someone who knew his stuff. When he saw this sword technique for the first time, he was shocked. This sword technique? Are you sure you created it? Yi Xian's expression was calm. Of course. The mysterious man went silent for a moment before saying, this sword technique is extraordinary. If it was really created by you, then the sword master is far inferior to you. Yi Xian sheathed his sword and smiled. Thank you, senior, for your confirmation. However, compared to the sword master, I am still lacking. Of course, I won't look down on myself. To me, I have just stepped onto the path of Daoist and I still have a long way to go. The mysterious man said, you can't be complacent and you can't feel inferior. With such a state of mind, you will naturally be able to walk further in the way of the sword. When he said that, he paused for a moment before continuing, I don't know how you know about this place, but this isn't a good place and it isn't suitable for training. It is best if you go somewhere else and don't make a mistake. Yi Xian smiled bitterly in his heart. Actually, he didn't want to stay here because the mysterious man in front of him wasn't an ordinary person. If he continued to stay here, who knew what would happen? However, he couldn't leave. This time he had to obtain the Dao Law. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and smiled. Senior, you have been here for 1,000 years? More than that. The mysterious man replied. Yi Xian was shocked. He thought about it and asked, why did Senior stay here for so many years? When he said that, he continued, of course, if Senior is willing to stay here, then I didn't ask. If not, then maybe I can help you a little. This time the mysterious man went silent. Yi Xian was delighted. Apparently, this mysterious man did not stay here of his own accord. Well, who would stay in such a dark place for so many years for no reason? At this moment, the mysterious man suddenly said, there's nothing you can do about me. If you leave now, you'll be able to keep your life. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, tell me about it. Perhaps I'll be able to help. If I'm really unable to help, then I'll leave and won't disturb you any longer. After a moment of silence, the mysterious man said, go forward. Yi Xian nodded and continued to move forward. Although his expression was incomparably calm, his heart was secretly on guard. If it wasn't for the great god from the second floor and the world prison pagoda, no matter how good the Dao laws were, he wouldn't have taken the risk. Because he knew very well that the strength of this mysterious person before him was definitely much, much stronger than him. If their strength wasn't equal, then any schemes would be useless. After walking for about 15 minutes, Yi Xian stopped. Not far in front of him was a mountain wall. Under the mountain wall, a man was sitting. The man was wearing a tattered robe. His hair was so dark that it was touching the ground. Because his hair was too long, Yi Xian couldn't see the man's face. The man just sat there and his hands and feet weren't tied. Obviously, something was restraining him. Yi Xian stopped around 30 meters away from the man. His expression was calm, but he was secretly on guard. At this moment, the mysterious man suddenly said, it's really rare to have such a cultivation in the sword Dao at such a young age. Unfortunately, your strength is far from enough to solve my predicament. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I see that Senior isn't restrained by anything, but you can't move. Is there another reason? The mysterious man suddenly raised his head, and a tiny empty character silently condensed between his brows. With the appearance of this empty character, Yi Xian suddenly discovered that the space around him was trembling, as if it was responding to something. Dao Law. Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. This Dao Law was actually on this mysterious man. And this Dao Law was most likely related to space. Do you know what this is? The mysterious man suddenly asked. Yi Xian shook his head, I don't know. The mysterious man said, this is a divine item. Obtaining this item will allow one to obtain divine power. Unfortunately, when I obtained this item back then, I wasn't strong enough to subdue it, so I was imprisoned here for over 1,000 years. For the past 1,000 years, I haven't been able to move an inch. Yi Xian said in a low voice, this item is actually so powerful. Senior, do you have any way to save it? The mysterious man said, yes, find a special physique and let it choose someone else. Yi Xian said softly, I believe the blood on the ground is the person that Senior is looking for, right? The mysterious man said, yes. For the past 1,000 years, I used all sorts of methods to find cultivators and made them think that there was a precious treasure here, so they came here one by one. Unfortunately, no one came. This divine item was never willing to leave me and choose someone else. At this point he paused for a moment before he continued, "Until you appeared." Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he heard this. He wanted to retreat, but a mysterious force suddenly enveloped him. The mysterious man smiled and said, "Do you know how happy I was when you appeared in this abyss? Because this divine item actually reacted when you appeared. It was the first time in 1,000 years that it reacted to a human." At this point, his voice carried a trace of excitement that was difficult to conceal. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "But why did you keep asking me to leave just now?" The mysterious man chuckled, "If I asked you to come here, you would definitely be suspicious and leave instead. But if I asked you to leave, it's very likely that you would come here." Psychological warfare. Yi Xian held the sword in his hand tightly and it was trembling. Meanwhile, the mysterious man suddenly said, "You're really not simple for your attainments in the sword Dao to reach such a level at such a young age. Unfortunately, you're really too weak in my opinion. You're so weak that you can't even withstand a single blow. So don't waste your energy." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Senior, aren't you afraid of my Yi clan?" The mysterious man smiled, "Perhaps you do have an extraordinary power behind you, but so what? Even if you face endless trouble outside, it's better than dying here. What do you think?" Yi Xian shook his head, "I admit defeat." The mysterious man said, "I wasn't a heinous person in the past. Unfortunately, after being imprisoned for over 1,000 years, good people and bad people are meaningless to me. Freedom, I just want freedom." As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian instantly felt a mysterious force pulling him towards the mysterious man. He couldn't resist it. It was useless even if he executed 2 types of sword intense. The gap between them was too big. The man in front of him was so strong that even the second-floor great god couldn't fight against him. Otherwise, the second-floor great god wouldn't have asked him to come instead of taking the Dao law away. The problem was that if the second-floor great god couldn't defeat him, would he be able to defeat him by asking him to come? Asking him to come was equivalent to asking him to die. He didn't know what the second-floor great god was thinking. The closer Yi Xian got to the mysterious man, the more the Dao law between the mysterious man's eyebrows became. When he was less than 5 feet away from the mysterious man, the Dao law between the mysterious man's eyebrows was already as bright as the sun. At this moment, the mysterious man's body actually began to tremble. At this moment, the mysterious man was extremely excited because he could feel that the divine object between his eyebrows was showing signs of leaving. As for Yi Xian, his expression was ferocious. His face was filled with unwillingness and anger. In fact, he was very calm inside. If it was something else, he would definitely be afraid. However, he really wasn't afraid of the Dao law. This was because he had a tower. Soon he was getting closer and closer to the mysterious man. When the two of them were very close, the mysterious man suddenly roared. In an instant, the Kong character between his eyebrows suddenly flew out and directly sank into the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Yi Xian's body trembled violently as if he had suffered a heavy blow. Meanwhile, the mysterious man was like a deflated balloon as he went limp. However, Yi Xian was frozen on the spot as if his body was frozen. After a while, the mysterious man suddenly burst into laughter. His laughter grew louder and louder until it filled the entire underground abyss. Just like that, the mysterious man only stopped after laughing for about half an hour. Then he looked at Yi Xian in front of him. "Back then I chased after this thing for a full 10 years. Unfortunately, I didn't expect to be imprisoned by it. If it wasn't for this thing, I'm afraid I would have entered the Supreme Realm long ago." Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. "Senior, are you trying to kill me? If that's the case, that's fine too. It saves me a lot of pain." The mysterious man shook his head. "How can I kill you? If I kill you and it comes looking for me again, won't I be imprisoned again? Moreover, I've stayed in this sunless place for over 1,000 years. Do you know how I've passed these 1,000 years?" At this point his expression was quite ferocious. 1,000 years, a whole 1,000 years. If I could commit suicide, I would have done so long ago. But now, I hope someone can come and feel the loneliness and pain I've experienced for the past 1,000 years. After saying that, he lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder and smiled. "With your cultivation, living for 100 years won't be a problem. After 100 years, I'll come and see you." After saying that, he turned around and left. As if he had thought of something, the mysterious man suddenly stopped. "I'm happy today. Do Do you have any last words? If you do, I don't mind saying a few words for you. After a moment of silence, Zhou Xian said, help me pass a message to the Realm Defense Alliance's Supreme Lord Lu. Say, I'm your father. The mysterious man was stunned. Are you sure? Zhou Xian said indifferently, I'm sure. However, the Realm Defense Alliance's Supreme Lord Lu is an expert above the true defense law realm. Although you're not weak compared to him, I'm afraid you're much weaker. So it's better not to go. The mysterious man shook his head and chuckled. Cheap provocation. Don't worry, I'll go. As for what you said about the opponent being not weak, that's because you don't know anything about my strength. Enjoy the rest of your life. After 100 years, this emperor will come and see you. After saying that, he soared into the sky. After a while, loud laughter came from outside the abyss. At the bottom of the abyss, Zhou Xian shook his head. Too handsome. Can't help it. I'm always blessed by the heavens. After saying that, he walked to the side and began to laugh crazily until his stomach hurt. I have a friend. He likes a woman. Yesterday, the woman asked him to accompany her to the hospital to have an abortion. The child is not his. My friend actually went. The most complicated thing in the world is love. One of my insights is that you can love, but you can't love in a humble way. Whether it's a man or a woman, if your love is too humble, the other party will only look down on you or not cherish you. I suggest that you stop dating and read more books. If you want to read books, you should vote for The Only Sword. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.